Good morning, everyone. How are you? I don't think I'm not gonna talk. I'm not gonna talk much today. So oh, that's so loud. I'm gonna turn the volume down a little bit on me. Guess we're just waiting for them to come. I hope everyone's having a great day. Oh, must stop sniffling in the microphone. Oops. Okay, we might. Looks like they might be getting started soon. Morning, gal. Hi, Rogue. I'm going to go off. Where is so, is that right? There we go. Test, test, test. Testing. Why isn't it? Why isn't it on?
The United States. It is a deeply sad day and is an occasion I do not relish, nor I am sure do any of my colleagues in the room. Nonetheless, this is a weighty responsibility, one that we all take very seriously, and we must do our duty for ourselves, for the institution, and for the nation. We are here to determine a process, not an outcome. We are here to assert our Article 1 responsibilities, not to act as judge or jury. And we are here fundamentally to chart a path forward that unveils the facts to the public. Committees in the House have been engaged in investigating. As they continue to pursue transparency and accountability, we are formalizing their impeachment inquiry efforts to give the House the strongest legal standing to pursue needed information and enforce subpoenas. Allowing this chamber to be at the apex of its constitutional power is vital to our system of checks and balances. I will briefly summarize the procedures today's resolution establishes for the inquiry. First, it charges the Committee on Oversight and Reform, the Committee on Ways and Means, and the Committee on the Judiciary with continuing the existing inquiry. It provides procedures for conducting hearings and calling and questioning witnesses. It grants the minority equal time to question and request witnesses. It ensures investigating committees can prepare and transmit reports and documents to the Committee on the Judiciary, which traditionally considers impeachment. It gives the president and his council opportunities to participate in proceedings before the Committee on the Judiciary. Finally, it authorizes the Committee on the Judiciary to report to the House of Representatives resolutions, articles of impeachment, or other recommendations. If these procedures sound familiar, they should. In preparing this draft resolution, we have followed the blueprint House Democrats followed in 2019 and have drafted this resolution to closely follow House Resolution 660 from the 116th Congress. I know my friends in the minority will point out the obvious. House Republicans expressed concerns with this approach and did not support these procedures previously. How then can we support them now? The answer is, of course, that what the then majority Democrats did in 2019 is now a precedent of the House of Representatives. Having created this procedure in 2019, it's appropriate that we follow it in 2023. Before I conclude, I know today's hearing may well be a heated one. This is a difficult topic, one that sparks passions on both sides. In 2019, under the leadership of my friend, our ranking member, we were able to push through our markup with a minimum of rancor. I'm hopeful that we will again be able to do so today. Every person in this room is here because we care about this great nation of ours. Everyone is here because we believe we can make America a better place for all of our citizens. No one here, least of all myself, relishes meeting on this topic today. But I know that we will do our duty, difficult as today may
I don't
be.
think they are.
I now yield to my very good friend, our
Oh,
ranking member, Mr.
fuck
McGovern,
off.
for any remarks he wishes to make.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Cole. And I just want to respond to something you said. We are not here to begin a proceeding. There's been an impeachment inquiry from day one that has been going on here. And I think it's proven time and time again that the President of the United States did absolutely nothing wrong. But this is a very, very sad day for this committee and for this institution and for this country. This impeachment sham is, to put it bluntly, an extreme political stunt. It has no credibility, no legitimacy, and no integrity. It's a distraction to draw our attention away from House Republicans' do-nothing Congress that has failed to pass any meaningful laws to help the American people. And it's a shocking weaponization of the impeachment process by MAGA extremists who are dead set on doing anything and everything they can to help elect Donald Trump. When I was chairman of this committee, Donald Trump was impeached twice. Both times I took it very seriously. His first impeachment was because he tried to blackmail a foreign leader into digging up dirt on then candidate Joe Biden. He wanted to stop Joe Biden from becoming president. His second impeachment, the most bipartisan in history, was because he tried to overturn the election by sending a violent mob here to the Capitol to stop us from certifying Joe Biden's victory, as the Constitution requires us to do. He wanted to stop Biden from taking office. Thankfully, he failed. But now Republicans are back at it again, trying to hurt Joe Biden, this time by abusing and weaponizing the impeachment process itself. All of this is happening because House Republican leaders refuse to abide by the election results. They're upset Trump lost. He's upset he lost. Some of them still don't even believe he lost. Many of them are upset that the insurrection didn't succeed on January 6th. And today, they want to finish the job. And what's left in the toolbox? An impeachment stunt they want to hang around Joe Biden's neck to tarnish him as he heads into the next election. They think it will muddy the waters and confuse people who know in their gut that Trump is a criminal and Joe Biden is an honest, decent man. Let me tell Republicans right now, you will fail. Because the simple truth is your whole so-called investigation is built on a lie. Republicans began this ludicrous exercise the second they took control of this House of Representatives, the very second they took control. And it's been a big, colossal waste of time ever since. It's been a pathetic joke. Not a single witness, not a shred of evidence that says Joe Biden did anything wrong. Every single Republican allegation has been debunked and discredited and disproven. Their own legal experts say there's not enough evidence to impeach. Their blistering bombshell key witness, he turned out to be a Chinese spy. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Their own speaker, Republican Mike Johnson, said just a few weeks ago that there's insufficient evidence to even initiate formal impeachment proceedings. Their own members, a Republican on the House Oversight Committee, was asked 2 weeks ago on Fox News, have you uncovered any wrongdoing by President Biden? She said, and I quote, the short answer is no. So Republicans have spent a year looking for dirt on Joe Biden, a year trying to make their bogus allegations stick, and at the end of it all, they have found nothing, no wrongdoing. So what is this about then? I think the answer is obvious. Republicans want to distract from their own ineffectiveness and incompetence, and they want to do everything and anything to help Donald Trump win the next election. The far-right MAGA extremists are in charge of the House of Representatives. They have neutered all the moderate Republicans and obliterated bipartisanship. And they want to cover up their own failure with this ridiculous political stunt. Donald Trump says jump. The MAGA extremists say how high. Donald Trump asked them to impeach Joe Biden, and here we are. They broke the law trying to stop Joe Biden from becoming president. They broke the law trying to violently overturn the election to prevent Joe Biden from taking office. And now they are waging this extreme political stunt by abusing and weaponizing the impeachment process. They tried to overturn the election on January 6th, and now they want to finish the job. And today, Democrats on the Rules Committee will make a simple case to the American people. First, that Joe Biden is a man of decency and integrity who respects the law, and this impeachment charade is an extreme political stunt designed to help Donald Trump win. Second, that every absurd Republican allegation against Joe Biden has been debunked. Third, that despite this fraudulent process, Republicans have received extraordinary cooperation from the White House. And fourth, that Republicans are doing this because they are focused on the wrong priorities and want to distract from their total failure to get anything done. And when this is all over, I am confident that the American people
Hi,
will
Matt. How are you?
overwhelmingly agree that this whole impeachment stunt is a national disgrace, designed to distract from their own incompetence and to help Donald Trump, a twice impeached ex-president who's been indicted more times than he's been elected. I'm confident that they will see that this is about vengeance, retaliation, and distraction. Those on the far right of the Republican Party have nothing to show for their time and power. They have never accepted that Joe Biden won. Obviously, they have contempt for the American people, and they are once again trying to overturn the election. They are willing to do anything and everything to get their way. Our democracy be damned. And my so-called moderate colleagues on the other side of the aisle are unwilling or unable to say enough is enough to those who are dead set on pursuing this extreme nonsense. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Pursuant to notice, I now call up House Resolution 918, directing certain committees to continue their ongoing investigation as part of the existing House of Representatives inquiry into whether sufficient grounds exist for the House of Representatives to exercise its constitutional power to
Morning,
impeach
Paul.
Joseph Biden, President of the United States of America, and for other purposes. Without objection, the resolution will be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. Is there any discussion or amendment?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The gentleman is recognized. Now, the clerk will report the resolutions.
Amendment number 1 to House Resolution 918, offered by Mr. McGovern.
Clerk will suspend. Without objection, the amendment is considered as read.
I object, Mr. Chair. I'd like to have the amendment read.
No, I think this is
Clerk will
just the
report the
Rules Committee
resolution.
arguing with each other.
House Resolution 918.
Just for the purpose, does the gentleman seek recognition?
Yes, I would.
Okay, the clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 1 to House Resolution 918, offered by Mr. McGovern. Before the resolve clause, insert the following. Whereas President Biden began his lifetime of public service serving on the Newcastle County Council before becoming one of the youngest people ever elected to the United States Senate at age 29. Whereas President Biden honorably represented Delaware for 36 years in the Senate before being elected vice president and ultimately president, where he has rebuilt our standing on the world stage and overseen the strongest job growth in American history. And whereas Donald Trump was impeached on a bipartisan basis, has been found liable for sexual abuse and for committee fraud and lying about his net worth, has been impeached twice, and is facing a total of 91 felony charges across 4 different state and federal criminal cases. Now, therefore be it.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the purpose of this amendment is to clarify that there is no comparison between the honesty and integrity of President Joe Biden and the dishonesty and lawlessness of Donald Trump. President Biden is a decent man, an honorable man. He follows the law and cares about upholding his oath of office. President Biden has dedicated his entire career to public service, a great personal cost to himself and to his family. President Biden has rebuilt our standing on the world stage. He has overseen the strongest job growth in American history. He has passed one of the most ambitious legislative agendas I have seen during my entire time in Congress. And my Republican colleagues know this. They know Joe Biden is a good man and that Donald Trump is a criminal. So they want to put something on the other side of the scale because they know that Trump's guilty as hell. Donald Trump tried to blackmail a foreign head of state to dig up political dirt on Joe Biden. Donald Trump tried to overturn an election because he lost to Joe Biden, sending a violent mob here to the Capitol on January 6th to try to stop the certification of the election. Donald Trump's kids stole money from a cancer charity. Donald Trump's son-in-law took $2 billion from the Saudi government in a deal so shady that it would make even Richard Nixon blush. Donald Trump has been indicted more times than he's been elected. And it's clear to me why Republicans are going after Joe Biden and trying to drag his name through the mud. They want to help normalize Donald Trump's corruption and criminality. They want to convince people that everyone does it, so it doesn't matter. Well, guess what? Everyone doesn't do it, and it does matter. There's no comparison, none whatsoever, between the decency, civility, and public service of Joe Biden and the criminality, corruption, and abuse of power of Donald Trump. Republicans launched this absurd inquiry almost a year ago. And here's what we've learned. We've learned that this investigation has received extraordinary cooperation from the Biden administration and has yielded mountains of proof that all confirms President Biden follows and respects the law. We've learned that President Biden is a good dad, that he loves his son unconditionally. We've learned that his son, Hunter, lost his mom and sister in a terrible car accident. He lost his brother to cancer. This is someone with a lot of trauma in his life and who sadly turned to drugs. And we've seen that Republicans have sought to weaponize that trauma and use it
Hi,
to attack
MJ. Hi,
President Biden
Paulina.
and his family. Frankly, it's just disgusting. I mean, we literally had Marjorie Taylor Greene hold up explicit photos of Hunter Biden at a committee hearing. And it's unclear to me whether Republicans are so full of it that they actually believe this
Hey,
stuff,
Joe.
or it's all for show. But either way, I find it to be so awful and just really offensive and quite frankly rotten. And after 10 months of digging and tens of thousands of pages of documents, all Republicans have proven is that President Biden did nothing
Share the
wrong.
broadcast.
But they don't care that they've found no evidence because for them, this is all just about weaponizing and abusing the impeachment process in order to hurt President Biden. Quote, they did it to me. That's what Trump said in an interview a few months ago. I further quote, and had they not done it to
Thank
me, I
you,
think, and
Paulina.
nobody officially said
I
this,
think
but I think
it's,
had they not
I'm
done it to
getting
me,
better.
perhaps you wouldn't have it being done to them, end quote. Now let that sink in. The whole impeachment stunt is happening because the former president demanded that MAGA extremists in Congress impeach Joe Biden. They don't care about the evidence. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about the damage this will do to our country or to this institution. Quote, either impeach the bum or fade into oblivion. That's what the former president says on social media. Either impeach the bum or fade into oblivion.
Morning, Badger.
So that's why we're here today. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I urge adoption of my amendment and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Is there further discussion or debate on the amendment? Hearing none, the questions on the amendment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have
I
it.
ask for roll call.
Roll call's been requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Burgess. Mr. Burgess, no. Mr. Reschenthaler. Mr. Reschenthaler, no. Mrs. Fishbach. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Massey. Mr. Massey, no. Mr. Norman. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy. Mr. Roy, no. Mrs. Houchin. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. McGovern.
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon.
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Leisure Fernandez. Ms. Leisure Fernandez, aye. Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 9 nays.
The noes have it. The amendment's not agreed to. further amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Gentlelady from New Mexico is recognized.
Mr.
Ah,
Chair,
You would,
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
okay. Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 2 to House Resolution 918, offered by Ms. Leisure Fernandez. Before
Why
the
doesn't
resolve
Tom
clause,
know how to
insert the
run his
following.
fucking meeting?
Whereas in the last impeachment proceedings against then-President Donald Trump, there was extensive evidence and thousands of hours of video footage of a violent attack on the Capitol that led to the deaths of 5 law enforcement officers and seriously injured more than 140 more. Whereas the violent attack on the Capitol delayed a constitutional electoral proceeding, while Trump, who incited the attack, watched it unfold for hours without intervening, according the testimony of Trump staffers before the United States House Select Committee on the January 6th attack. Whereas the evidence in the 2021 impeachment proceedings against then-President Donald Trump showed that Trump sought to overturn the election and interfere with the peaceful transfer of power for the first time in United States history. Whereas such evidence led to a bipartisan impeachment in the House, a bipartisan vote of 57 senators to convict Trump in the Senate, and a federal criminal indictment related to the January 6th assault in efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Whereas in the 11 months since the Republican-led committees, the Committee on Oversight and
Yeah, I
Accountability,
think it
the
is a very
Committee on the
good strategy. I
Judiciary,
mean, it's
and the
really
Committee on Ways and Means first began their investigations, Republicans have received tens
all
of
that's
thousands of pages
left.
of private bank records, Department of Treasury, the National Archives, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and Internal Revenue Service documents, and dozens of hours of witness testimony, including Special Counsel Weiss and other high-ranking officials at the FBI, IRS, and Department of Justice attorney assigned to Hunter Biden's case. Whereas, despite the avalanche of information House Republicans received from the Biden administration, banks, and Hunter Biden's business associates, none of the 3 Republican-led House committees pursuing a Biden impeachment has found any evidence of wrongdoing by the president, let alone an impeachable offense. Whereas Senate Republicans who conducted their own investigation in 2020 of Joe Biden's conduct as vice president also did not find any evidence of wrongdoing. Whereas the evidence, including bank records and repeated statements from witnesses gathered during the current investigation, has shown that President Biden fought corruption, was not involved in his family members' business dealings, and respected the independence of the Department of Justice. Whereas the Burisma conspiracy theory that has long been debunked, and in fact the investigation has confirmed that as vice president, Joe Biden successfully led a bipartisan and international coalition urging the Ukrainian government to address corruption. Whereas President Joe Biden chose to retain David Weiss, a United States attorney appointed by Donald Trump, as the special counsel leading the Hunter Biden investigation, and it is clear that Mr. Weiss has the full authority to investigate and prosecute Hunter Biden. Whereas, while the last Trump impeachment proceedings held public hearings, House Republicans have conducted nearly all of their investigation into President Joe Biden behind closed doors, have refused to publicly release all but 2 interview transcripts, and have repeatedly misrepresented the evidence, including witnesses' statements, to falsely accuse the president of wrongdoing. Whereas, as a loving father and a brother, Joe Biden has helped members of his family in their times of need. Whereas 46,300,000 Americans aged 12 or older, or 16.5% of the United States population, had a substance use disorder in the past, and 2/3 of Americans reported they or a family member struggle with addiction. Whereas addiction significantly impacts families whose loved ones suffer from substance abuse, and whereas loving a son who has struggled with addiction and other problems is not evidence of high crimes and misdemeanors worthy of a solemn impeachment inquiry. Now for there be it.
Gentlelady is recognized to explain, address her amendment.
Mr. Chair, I offer this amendment to remind the American people that after 11 months, 3 different committees investigating and a mountain of documents and
I
testimony,
love her.
Republicans have no evidence of wrongdoing by President Joe Biden. Instead, the Republican-led investigation has proven the opposite, that this is political vengeance for the impeachment of Donald Trump. Republicans have bent over backwards to distort the truth because the twice impeached, 4 times indicted
They probably don't know the
who currently
Rules
has
Committee
91
exists,
felony
Max.
charges pending in both federal and state courts, wants them to. While Republicans say they need this inquiry to gather yet more evidence, they are deceiving themselves. They just don't like what the extensive evidence they've accumulated so far actually proves. President Biden and his administration voluntarily handed over tens of thousands of pages of private bank records, Treasury and National Archives documents. Biden administration officials from the FBI, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Department of Justice, along with Department of Justice Special Counsel Attorney assigned to Hunter Biden case, have provided dozens of hours of sworn testimony. After extraordinary transparency from the Biden administration, the evidence proves that President Biden did not engage in any wrongdoing. The evidence proves that President Biden did not profit and did not engage in James or Hunter Biden's business. Further, President Biden he respected the independence of the Department of Justice and retained David Weiss, the U.S. attorney appointed by President Trump as the special counsel leading the Hunter Biden investigation. The indictments this week of Hunter Biden prove that special counsel Weiss had full independent discretion to investigate and prosecute Hunter Biden free from political interference. But remember, impeachment is about what the president does, not what his son may have done. Biden's respect for the Justice Department is in sharp contrast to Trump, who urged his Department of Justice to investigate his political opponents. President Trump's own Attorney General, Bill Barr, had to resign in protest as Trump weaponized the Department of Justice after losing the 2020 election. Biden's respect for the law, no matter the consequence for his son, is the exact opposite of Trump's declaration he will be a dictator and will purge our agencies of our civil servants if he believes they are his enemies or unfaithful. Republicans often talk about Burisma, a far-fetched conspiracy theory, but Trump's own special representative for Ukraine negotiations, Kurt Volker, found that Burisma was based on a theory that, I quote, had been debunked, end quote. And there was, I quote again, no evidence to support it, close quote. The more than 39,000 pages of documents Republicans already received and the 62,000 on the way prove that President Biden follows the rule of law as he has done his entire career. He has fought corruption at home and abroad and has upheld his most sacred oath to the Constitution, an oath he has made 10 times throughout his dedicated career of public service. In contrast, we've seen House Republicans repeatedly conceal information, hide it from the public, and selectively leak lies and innuendo that distorts the truth. While the American public waits for Congress to do its job to fund our government and lower costs, extreme MAGA Republicans want an impeachment inquiry to create more division, more chaos. This do-nothing Congress is all about chaos. It's a do-nothing but chaos Congress. The American people know what evidence of high crimes and misdemeanors looks like. We know what it feels like. Evidence of an impeachable offense looks like the January 6th insurrection, where violent mobs stormed the Capitol and threatened to hang Vice President Pence and kill Speaker Pelosi. They attacked us because Trump wanted to delay the certification and overturn the 2020 election. That violent attack on our democracy led to the death of 5 law enforcement officers and seriously injured 140 more officers. When you walk out of this room, look with kindness and gratitude in your heart at the Capitol Police protecting us. They know what evidence of an impeachable offense looks like. They know what it feels like because they battled in hand-to-hand combat. That's what impeachable offense evidence looks like. Ask yourselves, what does my vote for the sham inquiry do to their sacrifice? You know, it's incredible. 197 Republicans voted against impeaching Trump for an insurrection that they witnessed and experienced firsthand as they ran for cover or barricaded themselves in their office. But now they're going to be okay with continuing an impeachment investigation into Biden when a deluge of evidence shows there's no wrongdoing. Are you kidding me? On January 6th, Trump and the insurrectionists failed to overturn the election. The evidence of that day led to a bipartisan impeachment in the House, 57 senators voting to convict in the Senate, and a historic criminal felony indictment of President Trump. What the Republicans have done by bringing this inquiry is to highlight for every American to see two visions of what leadership for the greatest democracy in history looks like. The extreme MAGA Republicans' vision is that they must do all they can to bring back to power a president who brags about becoming a dictator, a president who conspired and then organized a violent mob to disrupt one of our most sacred democratic traditions, the peaceful transfer of power. A President Trump who desperately tries to punish his political enemies without any evidence of wrongdoing. Our democratic vision, and that of President Biden, is that no person is above the law. Our vision is of an American that respects the independence of the police, the courts, and our nation's justice system. Our vision is of a Congress that fights to make our communities better rather than using our power and our precious time in this chamber for vengeance and to sow chaos. The differences could not be more clear. Democrats impeached the president because he tried to overturn an election and destroy our democracy. Extreme MAGA Republicans are pursuing impeachment as political revenge because a man with 91 felony charges is telling them to do so. We heard the statements and quotes that our ranking member said, but there are so many more of President Trump's vengeance and his calls for revenge. I urge my colleagues to adopt this amendment so the record is clear that the evidence has been gathered, and that evidence proves that there is no need to continue this time-consuming political theater. I yield back.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion or debate on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman,
Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I would note that we're here to talk about President Biden and an inquiry relative to President Biden. One of the whereas clauses here in the amendment that is offered says, whereas in the 11 months since the Republican-led committees, the Committee on Oversight and Accountability, the Committee on the Judiciary, Committee on Ways and Means, first began their investigations, Republicans have received tens of thousands of pages, private bank records, Department of Treasury, National Archives, Federal FBI, IRS documents, and dozens of hours of witness testimony, including Special Counsel Weiss and other high-ranking officials at the FBI, IRS, and the Department of Justice, attorney assigned to Hunter Biden's case. Well, I think what's important here, and we're not here to litigate the merits of impeachment, but to simply proceed with a process for an impeachment inquiry for this body, the House of Representatives, to be able to conduct its oversight function when we have seen an extraordinary amount of stonewalling, contrary to what the ranking member said, out of this administration. Consider, for
Hi,
example,
Kathy.
with respect to the IRS, Biden's Department of Justice has prevented two tax division officials, Mark Daley and Jack Morgan, from testifying, despite subpoenas. Now, this is particularly concerning given the indictment of Hunter Biden just this past week. According to these, to the IRS whistleblowers, both Morgan and Daley were involved in the decisions to not charge Hunter Biden with some of his most egregious tax crimes. IRS whistleblower Shapley said in 2021 that Daley had agreed with recommendations in the report to charge Hunter Biden for crimes in tax years 2014 to 2019. In June 2022, however, Morgan and Daley reportedly gave a presentation on why DOJ should not charge Hunter for the 2014 and 15 tax years. Well, that is particularly concerning, given the extent to which those have now been allowed to lapse with respect to the statutes of limitations. Morgan and Daley also have firsthand information about David Weiss's authority to charge Hunter Biden outside of Delaware, which could potentially contradict previous statements Weiss has made. On June 29th of 2023, the committees requested transcribed interviews with 11 DOJ officials, including Morgan and Daley. DOJ declined the request and multiple further requests. On September 14th, 2023, House Judiciary Committee issued deposition subpoenas for both Daley and Morgan. However, Department of Justice stonewalled the committee once again. Daley's personal counsel said the Department of Justice directed him not to appear. On November 1st, 2023, House Judiciary Committee issued a subpoena to Morgan that required his presence at a new deposition date. However, Morgan's personal counsel informed the committee that DOJ had directed
Oh,
him
he has
not
trouble
to
with
appear.
that word too.
Now, fast forward. December 7th, Hunter Biden's indicted. DOJ states, quote, a federal grand jury returned a 9-count indictment today, charging Hunter Biden with 3 felony tax offenses and 6 misdemeanor tax offenses. According to the indictment, Hunter engaged in a 4-year scheme in which he chose not to pay at least $1.4 million in self-assessed federal taxes he owed for tax years 2016 to 2019, and to evade the assessment of taxes for tax years 2018 when he filed false returns. Okay. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle want us to believe that that's some standalone problem for the president's son. But here's the problem. 4 months ago, the same David Weiss that we're talking about tried to bury the tax case against Hunter Biden. That's what happened. At that point, offering a no jail plea agreement on 2 relatively unimportant misdemeanors. Basically, a deal. Pretty much out of the ordinary. And
Yes,
the problem with that is
Hunter's
that
the
now suddenly
newest.
Weiss has moved in a
Actually,
different direction
Hunter's running in
because the judge
2024.
called it the deal
That's the,
out.
that's the plot twist.
He couldn't rationalize the plea bargain deal that he gave Hunter, and now he's making the case in the very indictment that he just put forward. The fact of the matter is there's been an extraordinary amount of stonewall. This is one example of dozens that we could get into. And this is why the inquiry matters. This is why we should proceed with the inquiry. There are other issues that we could get into and raise, but to dismiss it and to just put aside and say there's been all of these investigations and there's been no issues that have been raised is just completely contrary to what anybody with eyes reading news accounts of what has occurred and looking at the indictment that was presented last week would understand. I yield back to the chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Gentleman's recognized.
appreciate the gentleman engaging. But let's be honest, we're here because Donald Trump asked you, no, demanded that you be here today to bring this inquiry forward. That is why we're here. Dozens and dozens of Republicans and even Fox News hosts, let that sink in, have bluntly admitted that there's no evidence to support impeaching President Biden and have instead lamented that pursuing impeachment is not good for the country. Over the course of this year-long fishing expedition, because this is not beginning today, we've been doing this for over a year, House Republicans have poured over tens of thousands of pages of documents and financial records provided by the administration, have interviewed witnesses for dozens and dozens of hours, yet nothing they have revealed has supported their wild conspiracy theories and debunked the allegations. Nevertheless, here we are. But I think it's important to point out that this is a waste of time. I'm going to give
Hey,
you the
Steve,
words of
welcome.
Republicans. Don't take my word for it. Speaker Mike Johnson reportedly told his own colleagues, quote, that there is insufficient evidence to initiate formal impeachment proceedings. Rep. Mike McCall admitted, we don't have the evidence. That's his quote. Ken Buck, our colleague, the evidence for impeachment doesn't exist right now. He also said, I haven't seen any evidence linking Hunter Biden's activities to Joe Biden. That I'm not convinced that the evidence exists. Rep. Dusty Johnson said, there's a constitutional and legal test that you have to meet with evidence when it comes to impeachment, but he has not seen that evidence. John Curtis, my bar for impeachment is incredibly high. For me, it's all about, is there an impeachable offense and is there evidence of an impeachable offense? And when asked if he had seen anything that comes close to that bar, his answer was, quote, no. Darrell Issa, the former House Oversight Chair, said the actual participation by the vice president and now president that still has to be discovered and or nailed down. Lisa McLean, when asked if the House Republicans, after nearly a year of investigation, had uncovered any improperly influenced policy decisions by President Biden, said, quote, the short answer is no. I could be here all day reading quotes from your colleagues, Republicans, who basically have publicly admitted this is a waste of time after a year, after a year. So let's be honest. We are here because Donald Trump ordered you to be here. He wants to finish the job. We're not here because there's any smoke. We're here basically because this is what the former disgraced president wants from you. And with that, I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record several pages of recent Republican quotes, basically saying this is no evidence and a waste of time.
Without objection. For any further discussion of the amendment? The gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
I thank the chairman. You know, the gentleman talked about stonewalling. I want to read him a quote. Quote, finally, allegations of obstruction ignore historic questions of privilege, ongoing litigation on the matter, and the fact that many executive branch witnesses testified. Democrats cannot complain about lack of participation when they created an environment that made testifying untenable. The American people will have the opportunity to decide in November 2020. We should let them, end quote. I suspect the gentleman recognizes that quote. Those are his words when he voted against impeachment of President Trump in 2019. So let's not pretend that this is not anything but the farce that it is. I understand the gentleman's position regarding President Biden, but the notion that this has any semblance of credibility or legitimacy is bellied by the facts. And while I would hope that my colleagues would apply some coherent consistency with respect to their views on impeachment, I'm not expecting that. But one thing that I certainly don't believe the American people can countenance is the notion that somehow this process is a fair one, or a transparent one, or an open one, or unnecessary. And that I would yield to my colleague from New Mexico.
Thank you very much. And I think that in response to this, the very fact that there is an indictment of Hunter Biden shows that President Biden and President Biden's Department of Justice stood back. And I think it's important to actually remember that Attorney General Garland recently reiterated his basic truth about this case. And he said, I promised the Senate when I came before it for confirmation that I would leave Mr. Rice in place and that I would not interfere with his investigation. And I have kept that promise. He also testified that there had been no contact with the president or the White House about the Hunter Biden matter. So all that you are doing over there of saying something has happened with Hunter Biden and we must raise it and we must have more and more and more documents. Oh my God, almost 100,000 pages of documents already, and you can't find a link? Because we need to remember that this is about whether or not President Biden has done anything in the last 3 years. It's not about his son's action. Just as the impeachments of President
that's
Trump
funny.
were about his conduct, and they weren't about how his kids or his son-in-law profited greatly from his presidency. They weren't about that $2 billion deal. They weren't about the money that those kids stole from a cancer charity. They were about what did President Trump do in office, not about his kid. And so this actually just proves the fact. So with that, I'll yield back to my colleague.
And I would echo my colleague's remarks and would yield to the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
The other thing that troubles me about this is that our colleague across the aisle has said that this has to happen because there's stonewalling despite the tens of thousands of pages of evidence, the testimony by private individuals, et cetera. But he's ignoring the fact that this claim that these IRS folks have disclosed misconduct has been debunked by their own witnesses, by people from the U.S. Attorney's Office, by people from the Department of Justice, by people from the FBI, by agents from the IRS. They've said these people were wrong. Yet our colleagues across the aisle cling to this misdirection and are using it to argue to their colleagues, oh, don't worry about it. This is just an inquiry. That's crap. I mean, this is, they have been given access to the evidence. They've been given unprecedented access to the evidence. Their own witnesses, their own documents have debunked the things that they are holding out there as evidence of some fictitious misconduct. So I yield back.
And I yield back.
Is there any further comment or discussion of the amendment? Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I think we just have to level set here. We got to remember that we're here dealing with an inquiry. This has nothing to do with the former president. This has nothing to do with
Really?
articles of impeachment.
Okay.
This resolution
Mhm.
establishes nothing more than a process to follow the evidence and assert our
Mm.
Article 1 authorities. By the way,
Mm.
Article 1 authorities that Nancy Pelosi greatly reduced. But again, any talk that is outside of the process, outside of producing witnesses, outside of compelling compliance with subpoenas, for example, is irrelevant to the discussion. We're here simply talking about moving forward with the process. With that, I yield back.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, the questions on the amendment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Hey, holy fuck, how
Recorded
you
vote has
doing?
been requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Burgess. Mr. Burgess, no. Mr. Reschenthaler. Mr. Reschenthaler, no. Mrs. Fishbach. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Massey. Mr. Massey, no. Mr. Norman. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy. Mr. Roy, no. Mrs. Houchin. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. McGovern. Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Leisure Fernandez. Ms. Leisure Fernandez, aye. Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 9 nays.
Noes have it. The amendment's not agreed to it. Are there additional amendments?
Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report.
Amendment number 3 to House Resolution 918, offered by Ms.
We're gonna have
Scanlon.
4 amendments.
Before the resolve clause,
exactly the
insert the
same.
following. Whereas in their investigation, the Republican majority has received 38,000 pages of financial records, including bank records for the personal accounts of members of the president's
I'm
family
fine.
and other private citizens.
I mean,
over
I'm not,
2,000
but I
pages
am.
of
I am.
Treasury Department reports and tens of thousands of pages of records and emails from the National Archives from President Biden's service as vice president. Whereas Hunter Biden has offered to testify publicly under oath as part of the investigation. Whereas House committees have heard dozens of hours of testimony from Hunter Biden's business partners and then Vice President Biden's financial advisor, 3 current U.S. attorneys and Department of Justice officials, and 4 current Federal Bureau of Investigation and Internal Revenue Service supervisory special agents, and unprecedented testimony from Special Counsel David Weiss on an ongoing investigation. Whereas the FBI and Treasury Department have provided access to and briefings on highly sensitive law enforcement documents. Whereas the National Archives have produced 62,000 additional pages of then Vice President Biden's records this week, and in addition to the 20,000 pages already publicly available. And whereas at the end of June, Committee on Oversight and Accountability Chairman James Comer said in an interview, "Every subpoena that I have signed as chairman of the House Oversight Committee over the last 5 months, we have gotten 100% of what we requested, whether it's with the FBI or with the banks, or with Treasury. Now, therefore be it.
Gentlelady is recognized for her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the stated purpose of launching this inquiry is the false claim that President Biden has stonewalled this sham investigation, the purpose of this amendment is to detail the unprecedented and extensive cooperation provided by the president, his family, and this administration, despite the absence of any constitutional basis for this sham political stunt. I want to remind everyone again what's really going on here. It's as simple as this. House Republicans have wasted the past year on a cheap political stunt. The people who send us to Washington do so with the belief that we will work to make their and their families' lives better.
Hi, give me
But as we've
coffee.
seen
Oh, you're
all
so
year,
welcome.
the extremists who have put the House majority into a chokehold aren't interested in keeping up their end of the bargain. And now they've brought us here today to waste more of the American public's time and tax dollars on petty political vengeance. In case it isn't clear already, constitutional scholars are not driving this impeachment inquiry. Instead, the former president's lackeys here in Congress are running the show, holding the floor hostage as they attempt to curry favor to obtain pardons or positions in a second Trump administration. Meanwhile, the rest of their conference seems content to sleepwalk into dictatorship as they yield what remains of their consciences to the most extreme members of the Republican Party. My amendment would shine some light on this shameful process and expose it for what it really is, a
Thanks,
circus and a
Margaret.
farce cooked up to placate the disgraced, defeated, and twice impeached former
Thank you.
president.
Thanks a lot.
You know, there's a term for what House Republicans have proposed with their resolution today to start an impeachment inquiry.
That bell,
It's called a
baby.
kangaroo court, a court in which the principles of law and justice are disregarded or
Hi,
perverted
basket
to
package.
reach
Good
a
morning.
predetermined conclusion. This is my favorite definition, a mob-operated tribunal that disregards or parodies existing principles of law. That's what we're dealing with here, a MAGA kangaroo court, engaged in a desperate search for
Oh,
evidence
Scott,
to
thank
prop up
you.
a predetermined conclusion, and in which they're willing to
That's
subvert
nice of
both
you.
the
Thank
truth
you.
and the Constitution in a naked political stunt. For the past year, President Biden and his
MJ and
administration
Clay,
and his
you got
family
a
members,
membership.
private citizens with no
El
role in the government,
Sarmento, you got a
unlike the former guy,
membership.
they have shared
Fred and
tens
Trish, I
of
don't know you,
thousands
but
of documents
welcome.
with
You
the
got a
Supreme
membership.
Inquisition, including emails, financial records,
Yeah,
and Treasury
Margaret.
Department reports. They've responded to extreme Republican requests, no
Yeah,
matter how absurd.
9,000.
Chairman Comer of the Oversight Committee has admitted this himself, saying, every subpoena that I have signed over the last 5 months, we've gotten 100% of what we requested.
I get.
Numerous
thank
individuals,
you.
including private citizens, U.S. attorneys, Department of Justice officials, a special counsel overseeing an ongoing investigation, and federal law enforcement agents have
Yeah,
made
you got
themselves
the
available for
emoji
dozens of
of
hours
Tiffany
of testimony
with
and
her
interviews.
um,
Federal law enforcement officials have
with
provided
her
briefings
updated
and access to highly sensitive documents.
meme.
The president's son has offered to testify publicly under oath in front of Congress and the country.
You know, Scott, I really
an offer
appreciate
that the
all the
Republicans
support
have
and
rejected.
the contributions
Extreme
and chat and
Republicans will
everything.
continue
Everyone does
trying to
such
muddy
like
the
a
waters, attempting to drag
like
the
the chat
president
is
and the
such
American
an
people
important
down
part of
the
this whole
rabbit hole of
experience.
conspiracy theories and untruths to support their MAGA kangaroo court. But the public knows this is a sham. The fact is that Chairman Comer and the rest of the so-called investigators have seen everything. Their fundamental problem isn't a lack of evidence. They have mountains of evidence. Their problem is that none of it proves their baseless accusations, and they know it. They can't even look at us. Dozens and dozens of Republican members and even Fox News hosts have admitted on the record there's no evidence, and they know it. But instead of admitting that, Republican leadership
Oh, no
has
worries.
yielded to the
Thankfully,
blackmail
you're
of the
so
MAGA
kind.
mob
Thank you,
and agreed to spend our last
Margaret.
legislative days of the
Thank
year
you. Oh my
wasting more
goodness.
time to prop up a floundering, dead-end investigation. And in doing so, they further their attempts
Well,
to
I love
chip
you
away
too.
at the legitimacy and core values of our country's institutions.
You guys are
The
gonna
American
make me
people deserve
cry.
better than this. I encourage all of my colleagues to support my amendment to shine transparency and truth onto this extreme, illegitimate stunt. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Is there further discussion or debate on the amendment? Gentleman from
I'll
Pennsylvania.
yield to the ranking member. I'm sorry.
No,
Mr.
no,
Chairman.
go ahead, go
Okay,
ahead.
okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. So again, I got a level set here. We got to remember that these documents that my colleagues are talking about that were produced, these weren't just freely given documents by the good graces of the Biden administration or the Biden family, rather. Those were given to the House by whistleblowers. Whistleblowers, I might add, that had been vilified by the far left Democratic extremists. In the bank records, these bank records weren't freely given by the Biden
Bruce, I
administration.
thought
They
you
weren't even
thought
freely
I
given by
was
the
a
banks.
terrible
The
person.
banks
Why
received
are you
subpoenas,
watching?
and that compelled the production of the
I
bank
watch
records.
people I don't like
So if
either,
there,
so
again, we're
that's all
talking about
right.
a process
Yes,
here. There
I
should be,
understand.
if there's nothing to hide, why not just go through the process? Why not just have this so we can compel the production of documents, so we can compel the testimony of witnesses and force some depositions? If there's nothing to hide, there should be no issue
Max.
with following the process. So again, I want to
Oh,
level
holy
set
fuck,
and just set the stage for why we need
you
these
don't need to
documents.
do that
And
to brighten my
again,
day.
what we have received has not been freely given. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Is there further discussion or debate?
Just,
Ranking member
first I want to ask
recognized.
unanimous consent to insert in the record two different letters, one from the Trump White House and one from the Biden White House. And we hear a lot about
It's true, Max.
stonewalling. I mean, the cooperation has really been unprecedented, but let me just read one excerpt from this was in response to the
Hey,
inquiry
thanks.
regarding
Well, I
President
really
Trump.
appreciate
Their
all
response,
of
White
you
House's
guys too.
response to Congress was, given that your inquiry lacks any legitimate constitutional foundation, any pretense of fairness, or even the most elementary due process protections, the executive
Margaret.
branch cannot
Stop
be
it.
expected to participate in it.
Like,
Consistent with the duties of the President of the United States,
thank
and in
you.
particular, his obligation to preserve the rights of future occupants of his office, President Trump cannot permit his administration to participate
Hell.
in this partisan inquiry under any circumstances.
Oh, Scott, I'm sorry you're
Contrast
not
that with
having,
the
you're having a
response
Monday
that,
of a Tuesday.
Mr. Comer and Mr. Jordan received from this White House. Again, basically saying we believe in engaging in good faith is critical to avoid constitutional conflict.
Right? The
And we propose a
feels.
meeting with your staff to start this
Ah,
important process. Given the compressed timeline created
we're
by
all in
your
the
waiting
fields.
nearly 3 weeks to respond to our prior letter, we expect that
Lolo and
you will
Lolo's Lounge
put
Appreciation
down the
Day.
return date for your subpoena to allow accommodations
Well,
process to proceed. Basically, it's a tale of two approaches. One administration that wants to
thank
stonewall, that
you,
was
everyone.
Trump, and then this administration that has cooperated.
Without objection.
But I just want to close with this. This is breaking news for everybody. So our Republican colleague, Don Bacon, just a few minutes ago, told a small group of reporters this morning that there are, quote, probably not high crimes or misdemeanors that Joe Biden has committed. Yet he still plans to vote to authorize this impeachment inquiry, notwithstanding that there's no there there. I guess the question is, when are people going to stand up and end this extreme political stunt? This is not the beginning of something. This should
Wow.
be the end of something. You've been doing this for over a year, and there's nothing there. There's no smoke. And so this is a colossal waste of time. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Is there further discussion or debate on the amendment?
Mr. Chair.
Gentlelady from New
Uh,
Mexico is recognized.
Just in response to the idea that this is about creating a process, I just want to reiterate what both the ranking member has said, what Representative Scanlon has laid out in detail. A process has been ongoing. Subpoenas were issued. Subpoenas were responded to. Documents were provided. They were provided in many different ways.
Zero there,
And
there.
that is indeed a process. There is no evidence of anything but that, as pointed out earlier, President Biden,
Pre-rolls.
a good father.
I
President Biden fought corruption.
I don't,
President Biden.
I think they're
was
10
not
to
involved
15.
in
I don't
Joe
know.
or Hunter Biden's business dealings. That's
Yeah,
what the
and
documents have proven. What this process is
yeah,
keeping
I think
this
I think
story
I've seen them for
alive,
10.
is keeping Congress involved and distracted by this impeachment.
Marie, good morning. Bonjour.
Conspiracy thought, thought process, because it's like coming from
You have a
above.
Christmas
There is no
tree?
documents. We already have a
Does it
process that
smell
we
really
follow.
good?
And the idea that this is just about a process, we need to look at Newsmax. Chairman Comer actually said, I'd indict tomorrow before they even began this process. They
Oh,
were
you
talking
you gave
about
one away,
impeachment. They
Max?
were not
Good for you.
waiting for a process.
See,
And
someone
Mr.
else's
Mr.
Christmas
Chair,
tree is
I would
something that someone
yield
else
to
doesn't need.
my colleague.
That's great.
Gentleman's
What do you
recognized.
get with a membership? Well,
Chairman and,
we
Legislative Mayor,
try to
I couldn't
do
agree
a
more.
movie night,
Again, perhaps the most
and
frustrating
we
element
do one once a month,
is the
and
individual
we usually have a
dishonesty
technical
to
issue,
pretend that this
but
is
we
anything but a
end up
fait
on
accompli.
Discord.
There isn't a single one of
So
you who's going to vote against
we're
impeachment
still
if
struggling a bit,
articles are brought to the
but
floor
that's
4
usually
weeks from
what we
now,
do.
8 weeks from now,
So
12 weeks from
that's
now.
the
So
main perk right
pretending
now.
as though this is just somehow a very simple
And
step
the
forward to
typical
approve
price of a
through your
membership
cursory
is
process
$1.99 a
is
month.
not level setting with the American people. It is one of the most solemn votes that any of you will take in your careers. I suspect none of you have voted in the past to initiate an impeachment inquiry. So treating it in this cursory way,
Well,
as the gentleman from Pennsylvania apparently wants the American people to believe, as I said, is inconsistent with the constitutional nature of impeachment,
hi, Butterfly.
weightiness of impeachment, and proceeding on this course. And I would hope it would give some of you some pause. It's clear that that hasn't been the case. I yield back to the gentleman.
And thank you. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Is there any further discussion or debate on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Chair, I would
Good
yield
to see your
my
member.
colleague from Pennsylvania.
Gentleman's recognized.
I'd like to thank my good friend. Again, just a level
Thanks,
set, we're here talking
Butterfly.
about a
I'm getting there.
process. And it's one thing to cherry pick lines from either this White House or the last administration. At the end of the day, we're here protecting our Article 1 authority. And we're here largely because the Biden administration lawyers are saying they don't have to face the subpoenas. They don't have to compel this evidence because we haven't had this vote. So they're the ones that are saying we don't have to be here. We are trying to set this up so that we can get all the evidence and have this. But again, this is about the
Well,
process, and this
I
is
mean,
about
basically, it is the OnlyFans. It's about the only fans,
I'm sorry. Ms.
the only fans you'd ever get. No, or never want, not get, ever want.
I didn't hear much
No.
about Article 1 authorities from you or any of my colleagues on the Judiciary Committee. You were there
Yeah.
with me.
Butterfly.
Yeah, and I yielded time that wasn't mine.
Sure.
So I apologize to my colleague. Here's the thing,
Yeah.
that once the rules have been changed, the rules are changed. So now you
Right.
can't say that what was good enough for
I
President
think
Trump is
that's
no longer
probably
good enough for
right,
President
Max.
Biden.
It probably
So
is
Democrats
about
shifted the
where I'm
standard.
streaming
Frankly,
it
now impeachment,
from.
you could view it as almost a political exercise. We're moving forward. Anytime you have a president of a different party than the House, there's going to be calls from whatever base it is,
I
whether it's
didn't get a
Democratic
strike
base or
for that
Republican base.
one night
Because of that,
last
but
week,
that's not the Republican standard.
or
That was the
Friday
standard that
night.
was
I
set by
mean,
the Democrats in the last administration twice. But again, this is
they
about
just
our Article
suspended the
1
stream.
authority. This is about making sure that we have this vote because the Biden administration is saying they don't have to produce the documents or compel witnesses to testify at depositions because we haven't had this vote.
Yeah,
And with that, the gentlelady's been very generous with her time. I yield back.
we have the champagne room,
yields
which is
back.
for members only.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Yeah, I would just note that again on the merits, right? There's going to be a lot of back and forth about who did when.
I think I think that's
But on the
probably
merits,
next.
the question here isn't about production of documents. Anybody who's ever been involved with subpoenas and presentation of documents knows that document dumps are fairly normal. The question is what is actually being presented? What is being shared? The Oversight Committee has identified 82,000 pseudonym communications that could, and this is the whole point of an
I
investigation,
thought the
contain
evidence that
key
was
evidence
being shared
for
proved
which they've only
to you
received
guys that
14
there were
documents.
crimes.
These are the questions
So
about the
I'm
pseudonym
confused.
emails that have been identified, 29,000 of which are between the office of the vice president and the family's businesses. So for those of us who are concerned about the flow of international dollars into the Biden
Give me
family,
coffee.
which is hard to even dispute
You can
based on the
also try
indictment
and
that is now
allow
sitting before us with
gifts,
respect to Hunter and where he's gone with his tax
if you
records,
wanna
but
do that.
importantly, what we know from other evidence about the
And then
extent of the millions of
people
dollars flowing
purchase
into the Biden family,
memberships, which is really
Hunter
kind of them.
and other members of the
Then
family.
it just
The
randomly
question
assigns them to
well,
viewers
what did
who
the
have
vice
that
president know when he was vice
toggle.
president? What did the president know?
Um,
What did he know between those times? That's the point of the investigation. Again, we have 82,000 pseudonym communications, 29,000 between the office of the vice president
uh,
and
and
these family
if
businesses,
you
and yet we
really
only have
wanna
14 of those
get one,
produced.
you hit the
We still
join
have the
button below
subpoenas
the
outstanding
live broadcast,
for
and
Mark
it'll
Daly and Jack
walk
Morgan
you
that I
through how
alluded
to
to
do it.
before
Thank
that are
you.
not being responded to. The reason
Hi,
is because
Siegfried.
those go to the heart of the problem. Those get to the heart of the question. So the point here, and with respect to previous quotes and so forth, the quote that the gentleman was referring to was my conclusion at the end after the inquiry is my conclusion about that point is said with respect to the articles. My point here is with respect to an inquiry. And look, again, none of us are perfect. We go through this. I just went back and reread the op-ed I wrote on December 11th, 2019, in which I concluded not to support the impeachment articles. But notably, I presented that I did not think the phone call was perfect. I did think there were issues that merited looking into when I was sitting before all of that to make sure we understood exactly what the communications were. The point is, we should pursue all of the facts wherever they may lead.
And then
As
what phone call
the
did you
body in
get
Article
after you
1 that
said
is
those things?
supposed to be checking Article 2. And in this instance, what we're looking at here are very important unresponded to queries by this branch, Oversight and Judiciary and others, to the administration. Again, what are we concerned about? What are we afraid about learning from Daley or Morgan? Why do we not want to make sure that Daley and Morgan come forth and testify? Why would that be concerning? Why do we
Oh,
not want
Siegfried,
to
have a good
have
appointment.
those emails that are potentially pseudonym emails, as we understand it, in terms of the communications between the office of the vice president and the family businesses? When we're talking about millions of dollars flowing from international sources with all sorts of connections with people who have testified on the
Seriously.
record, Devin Archer and others, about where the president was and the president's knowledge of the existence of these family businesses and the fact that they were selling, quote, the brand. There is significant amount of evidence that has come forward that raises questions that this body should want to know the truth about. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman,
Gentleman's
yeah,
recognized.
I think I need a decoder ring to follow what the gentleman was just saying. I mean, look,
Creating a personal
unprecedented
economy.
amount of cooperation from this administration. National Archives has listed the number of documents that have been turned over that have been asked for. Chairman Comas said every subpoena that I have
Yeah,
signed
it
as chairman of
definitely
the
is a
Oversight Committee over the last
ongoing
5 months,
workshop of
we've gotten
material.
100% of what we requested, whether it's with the FBI or with the banks or with the Treasury. That's Chairman
Uh,
Comer, the guy who said that he
let
would
me
vote to
let me
indict
see what I see in the
Joe
app.
Biden on day one before he's seen any evidence. And I want to thank the gentleman from Pennsylvania
Oh,
who's
you
no
know
longer
what?
with
I
us
don't.
for his honesty when he basically said that this is a political
I
exercise.
don't
So
see
he
it.
is absolutely correct. This is a political exercise, pure and simple. You can try to dress it up all you want, but that's what this is. And I appreciate and I want to thank
You
him
do. You
for his
might have
honesty. With
to
that, I
go
yield back.
to a browser
Mr.
or do
Gentleman
to
from Kentucky is
my
recognized.
Just in defense
profile
of the gentleman who's not here, what he said, I
or
believe,
leave
is
the
that the
live.
standard was lowered by
Sorry,
the other
that's
side of the
annoying.
aisle to a political exercise. And I just want for the
Oh,
record, since
wait,
he's not
sorry.
here to
In the
defend
app
himself,
at the
what he said
bottom, on the bottom
is
right, there's a
extremely
dollar
true.
sign. I
Appreciate
think
that.
that's where it
Gentleman from
is.
South Carolina is recognized.
Ken, I think it's really humorous, the fever that I see from the other side, to continually bring up Donald Trump. This is about Joe Biden, and to put some
Hey, welcome
some
back.
context to the money we're talking about. From 2014 to 2019, Biden family members and their affiliate companies received over 15 million from foreign companies and foreign nationals to Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, Romania, and China. Biden business associates received an additional 9 million. For the president's
Regret.
contention that
Thank you.
didn't know anything about it. Wasn't anywhere near Joe Biden.
Give me coffee. You got a membership.
Devin Archer, who was a longtime Biden associate, um, described the Biden brand, as Chip noted, and how Hunter Biden placed Joe Biden on phone calls, including on speakerphone 20 times with business associates. And, you know, for y'all to just want to water
Thanks,
this down
Margaret.
and say it's nothing, what are you scared of? What are you scared of the facts? This is an inquiry that's going to go. It should have started, you're right, it should have gone far longer than this. How many happened under Nancy Pelosi? 0. We took over in January. I think Kevin put the date is September
Rogue.
13th and 14th to do the special inquiry. These are facts.
Frank.
These aren't small things. There's got to be consequences
Herman.
with this guy. So it's
Would the gentleman yield?
oh, yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you so very much. You know, and I think that pointing out those comments from Mr. Archer is really important because we actually have the transcript and I'll address that later. But if you actually look at that transcript, Mr. Archer is very clear that while the father may have talked to his son, they never ever talked about business. They never ever talked about financial matters. And in contrast,
Excellent use
when
of
we
the
are looking
Euro
at
sign,
issues
gal.
about family business, I would like to enter into the record, Mr. Chairman, I seek consent to enter into the record, a political fact that says Trump taxes show foreign income for more than a dozen countries. And I think this,
Without objection.
I think that it is important. You are making a big deal of the fact that Joe Biden, as a private citizen, a lot of these things that you're talking about happened when Joe Biden was
That's
a private
true.
citizen, but more importantly, that his brother and his son were separate. They did not have that their businesses were not commingled. It's very clear from the evidence that they were separate. They were not the same. In contrast, we know from this article.
Oh, really? It's a
that says
dollar
that Trump
sign?
taxes show
What?
foreign income. Donald
Wait,
Trump's tax
Marie,
returns
what?
show the former president received income for more than a dozen countries during his time in office, highlighting a string of potential conflicts of interest. It took a lengthy legal fight to be able to get those documents, and it included money from the United Arab Emirates, from China. There was a lot of money made
Oh, this is
by
the Rules
Trump
Committee
because
of the
Trump,
House.
President Trump,
9
kept
Republicans and
ownership
4
of those
Democrats.
businesses. So I think it's really important to make the distinction that yes, Joe Biden has a brother and has a son, and they
And
have
I would
businesses,
definitely
but
say
that is
that
not
the
Joe Biden's
Democrats
business.
have come to
And
work.
that is the key. Here we are looking at what did the president do as president, in contrast to what President Trump did, which was get a whole lot of money, tell a whole bunch of people, you better book your hotel stays at
Stop
in
sniffing.
my properties while he was president. That is the contrast of what we're dealing with. And with that, thank you so much for yielding the time. I
Sure.
appreciate it.
Mr.
Mr.
Lega
Garland.
Fernandez, here's the difference. You've got a businessman that made his money long before he got into politics. What these facts or what we will find out is, and try to figure out, what service did Biden's provide? What expert was
sir.
Hunter to get the
I
24
don't
million
know.
and
So
the rest of the family
terrible.
members? That's what we're trying to get to the bottom of.
Oh, thanks. Give
He's
me
no
coffee.
businessman. He's a
Thank you.
politician. And let's let the money trail follow
Look how
and
cute
try
it
to figure
is.
out like
Like
his
is
paintings.
that a
Where did they
lemon
come
head?
from?
Oh my
Where'd the money
God,
come
is that a
from?
lemon
Let's
head?
follow the trail. This is a joke. If it wasn't so serious with the money that this man
That's what I feel like.
apparently had, and he's from day one didn't know anything about it, never had any
Oh,
involvement. He's on
that's a
phone
good
calls. How
point.
about the pseudonyms? What is that? I think in time, what y'all are trying to do is stall and prevent any information, more information from coming out. And the American people deserve better. And if he's innocent, as he says he is, let the facts show it. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, just briefly.
Gentleman is recognized.
Oh, I just want to say to the gentleman, he just read from the Republican leadership talking points that went out. I will assure him that almost everything he has said has been disproven or discredited already. We're happy to share that with him. But when he said that this is not about Donald Trump, I strongly disagree. Again, this is Donald Trump's quote: either impeach the bum or fade into oblivion. And unfortunately, my Republican colleagues are so fearful of him, are so
Yes,
afraid of
Steve.
him, that they do whatever he asks them to do. That is why we are here. We are here because of Donald Trump. We are here because the insurrection did not succeed on January 6th, and this is about finishing the job. So let's not kid ourselves that Donald Trump doesn't play a role here. I yield to the gentleman.
I would completely agree with the ranking member. USA Today, which is from last week, from December 4th, USA Today. Quote, if Trump, who has been impeached twice, is the 2024 Republican nominee, Rep. Troy Nails said he wants to give Trump, quote, a little bit of ammo to fire back, end quote, and say Biden has also been impeached, end quote. So the suggestion by the gentleman from South Carolina, by the gentleman from Pennsylvania, that this has nothing to do with Donald Trump is divorced from reality. You know it, we know it, the American people know it. This is being done at the behest of former President Trump. Why? Because he remains singularly focused on exacting retribution for being impeached in a bipartisan manner for his actions on January 6th. That's it. The rest of this is theater. I yield back to the gentleman.
I think I yield back.
Is there further discussion or debate on the amendment? Hearing none, the questions on the amendment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Gentlelady has requested a vote. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Burgess. Mr. Burgess, no. Mr. Reschenthaler. Mr. Reschenthaler, no. Mrs. Fishbach. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Massey. Mr. Massey, no. Mr. Norman. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy. Mr. Roy, no. Mrs. Houchin. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. McGovern. Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Leisure Fernandez. Ms. Leisure Fernandez, aye. Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 9 nays.
Noes have it. The amendment's not agreed to. Are there any further amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized. Clerk will report the resolution.
Amendment number 4 to House Resolution 918, offered
That's
by
right.
Mr.
Please
Neguse.
like, and if you can,
Page
share.
2, line 7,
Great.
strike investigative and insert the following: open and transparent investigative. Page 6, line 1, strike investigative and insert the following: open and transparent investigative. Page 9, line 19, strike investigative and insert the following: open and transparent investigative.
I don't think
The
he's,
gentleman's recognized on his amendment.
I think the chairman, I hesitate to belabor the arguments I've made already regarding what I consider to be and what I think the American people would find to be a baseless impeachment process that Republicans have initiated. It's a political stunt. The American people know that to be the case. They know that because there's been no cogent articulation by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle as to what crime they're actually investigating, no connection to the
somehow I
constitutional
knew that was
standard
going to
for
happen.
impeachment. But one of the other reasons they know this to be true is because of the sham process that Republicans have initiated. And this amendment seeks to at least rectify that glaring defect. And while this amendment, of course, has an audience of the entire committee, it perhaps has an even more targeted audience of 1 or 2 of my friends on the other side of the aisle who have spoken in the past about transparency. And I'm hoping maybe Mr. Massey or Mr. Roy might engage me in a colloquy about the merits of this particular amendment. It's very simple. Thus far, Republicans have engaged in a process that's been largely behind closed doors. Ms. Leisure Fernandez recounted this in great detail. The fact that so many of the interview transcripts have been hidden from the public, the fact that witnesses who have sought to testify in public, including the president's son, have been impeded by the committee from doing so. We went back and looked. The resolution that initiated the impeachment inquiry into former President Donald Trump is very similar in terms of the language that essentially Republicans have attempted to try to emulate different provisions of it. But there was one glaring omission. which is that in that resolution in 2019, prefaced behind every component paragraph that describes the investigation that the committees of jurisdiction would be engaged in was a commitment to, quote, open and transparent investigative proceedings. 3 words, open and transparent. Those 3 words were deleted by Republicans in this resolution. And so this amendment is very simple. It's very straightforward. It's not a gotcha amendment. There's no hidden door. It's simply asking my colleagues to add that phrase, open and transparent, to the resolution as a prefatory clause before the description of each investigative committee of jurisdiction. Because thus far, the process has been anything but. And so it makes sense to me why Republicans didn't include the phrase open and transparent, because the process has not been open and transparent. So I don't think this was an accident. It wasn't an error by omission. It was intentional. There's a great way for the Republicans, my colleagues, my friends on the other side of the aisle, to perhaps prove the contrary, which is to support this amendment. With that, Mr. Chairman,
would the gentleman
I'm
yield?
happy to yield to the gentleman from Kentucky.
Words are words, but the problem is I served on the Oversight Committee when the Democrats did their inquiry. And that happened 3 floors underground in a skiff where nobody could bring their cell phones. I sat down there for
That's
hours.
a great idea.
And what happened is
Is it
there was no
laptop land?
semblance of openness, or you would be arrested and taken to jail if you tried to witness what was happening inside of that skiff.
Hunter
for
Biden's
weeks.
laptop
I
land.
sat down there with Ambassador Sondland. I sat down there with Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. There was no openness, no transparency, unless you count Adam Schiff running out every time he got a nugget of something that he could leak. And that is exactly how I witnessed that process. Was the gentleman on the Oversight Committee or the Intel Committee at the time?
No, I was on Judiciary.
So if
But I guess
you've
the
been
question
on
to
either of
you-
those committees,
And I understand the argument you're making. I would say a couple things. First, the resolution, again, you all used it as essentially took different provisions and modified them and so forth. The inquiry resolution was following those interviews, as I can best recollect, from back in October and September of 2019. The inquiry resolution that you all have essentially used as a template was after that. And essentially what the resolution then compelled, for example, HPSI to do was to shall hold public hearings and shall issue a report on its findings. Your resolution, and of course included that's why the open and transparent language was included. This resolution does the opposite. That's all I'm trying to figure out is why not say the Oversight Committee is going to have, quote, open and transparent proceedings. We're going to require them to hold a public hearing, and we're going to require them to issue a report. Why is the language permissive, and why has open and transparent been deleted? And this isn't a political argument. It's a good faith question.
which I answered with a question, why were we in a skiff
Yeah.
for weeks?
What I'm saying to you is these
and
resolutions.
When the Democrats were
I
investigating.
hear you. What I'm saying to you is this inquiry resolution and the inquiry resolution that was adopted at the end of October in 2019 are both taking place after 10 months, 11 months of process. You've described what you contend are closed door hearings that HPSI conducted, interviews, that they conducted. Obviously, you've heard us talk about closed door interviews that Oversight has conducted. My point is that at the impeachment inquiry phase, when we took that vote, from then on, everything was public, which is why the resolution was structured as such. In this instance, Republicans have removed it, and it's clear that they don't intend to have a public process. That's what I'm asking.
Well, I suspect at some point the other side of the aisle will claim that the information that's being publicly released has no business being in the public about bank records and things like that. So maybe it's an It's an effort to respect the wishes of the other side.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sure that that's the reason, Mr. Massey, but
I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I'm going to yield to the ranking member. I'll just simply say again, I
What?
don't,
Are you
this is a good faith.
kidding me? Give me a fucking break.
It's not complicated.
Oh my
Adding
God. I'm
open and
sorry I
transparent.
sniffled.
To make a commitment to the American people that you're actually going to conduct a process that is open and transparent shouldn't be complicated. It shouldn't be difficult. And I don't know why. I get it. I understand your opposition to some of the other amendments, including amendments that I'm going to offer, but this really shouldn't be one of them. And I'll yield to the regular member.
No, I think I may have an answer for you. I'm reading USA Today. There's an article, House Republicans, talking about how they omitted open and transparent from the resolution, and the excuse, the rationale that a Republican aide gave was that keeping open and transparent in was wordy. I mean, I really, I mean, open and transparent, I mean, 3 words, too wordy. That's the excuse to eliminate it. It's laughable. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, again, I think we all should agree that this should be open and transparent. It was in the previous resolution when we were in charge. Let's just put it in. I mean, that's a sign of good faith. But to say that it's being omitted because it's wordy, I mean, come on, give me a break. I yield back.
I yield back. All right, yield to.
I don't know whose time it is, but I assume it's the chairman's time, so I appreciate it. Look, again, I've got to just level set here. This amendment literally does nothing other than change the wording of the subheaders. I mean, and the ranking member just admitted that. I mean,
He
we're here talking
only
about
has at
changing
the start of his
investigative to
paper.
open
I
and
have to
transparent,
level set
investigative.
here.
That's it. Just to put this in perspective, I have the side-by-side comparative, the 116th and the 118th resolution.
Well,
And
Why
yeah,
delete it?
Why'd you delete it?
because we have, our hearings have been in the open. They've been open and transparent to begin with.
Deliberately
And
deleted this. Why?
and again, I was with what Mr. Massey was talking about. I was on judiciary. A lot of those meetings were in fact, most of them were in a skiff. And as Mr. Massey said, had we come out of that skiff and reported what was being said and conducted, we would have been arrested and gone to jail. Our process here has been absolutely open. The public has been included, told, as compared to what Speaker Pelosi did, where again, we were 3 levels below ground in a skiff. So I just don't think this is necessary, but.
Just for the record, gentleman does control the time, so.
Okay, thanks.
Gentlemen, you-
I'll yield.
Yeah, I mean, again, these words were deliberately deleted. And my friends keep on saying to us, it's not about Trump, it's not about Trump, it's not about Trump, but now it's about Trump. So you can't have it both ways. But again, deliberately deleted the words open and transparent. And with all due respect, the process that you are conducting right now, I don't believe is open and transparent. And by the way, I mean, I'm not on the oversight committee either, but some things, especially on the first impeachment, were classified. There was a reason for some of that. But again, all we're asking for is a gentleman to put back in the words open and transparent. For some reason, Republicans deliberately removed it. None of us can figure out why, but I support the gentleman's amendment. I yield. Thank you for
I know you guys don't mean
I yield back. Thank you,
this,
Mr. Chairman.
gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion or debate on the amendment? Hearing none. Questions on the amendment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. Those have it. Recorded vote's been requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Burgess. Mr. Burgess, no. Mr. Reschenthaler. Mr. Reschenthaler, no. Mrs. Fishbach. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Massey. Mr. Massey, no. Mr. Norman. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy. Mr. Roy, no. Mrs. Houchin. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. McGovern. Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Leisure Fernandez. Ms. Leisure Fernandez, aye. Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 9 nays.
Those have it. The amendment's not agreed to. There are additional amendments.
Mr. Chair.
Gentlelady from New Mexico is recognized.
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 5 to House Resolution 918, offered by Ms. Leisure Fernandez. Page 2, line 14, strike may and insert the following: shall. Page 6, line 8, strike may and insert the following: shall. Page 10, line 2, strike may and insert the following: shall.
Gentlelady is recognized on her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a follow-up to the earlier amendment about the need for open and transparency in this process. But going to Mr. Washington's thought is, how do we do that? And I think one of the ways we do that is require, not permit, but require that the committees hold open hearings. It's simple. We always hold open hearings. This hearing that we are engaged in right now is open, and the American public is able to see what our arguments are, is able to determine, well, does this make sense? What should we be doing? What is the evidence? We need that, because right now, in the evidence that we as Congress people have been able to see, we know that there's clear and compelling evidence in the 100,000 pages of documents and the hours of testimony that President Biden was not involved in and did not profit from his brother or his son's business dealings. So in response to Mr. Norman's concerns about where does that evidence lead, the evidence in the record actually already shows that there was no connection. It's available, though, in closed door hearings and transcripts and meetings that are not easily accessible to the public. Extreme MAGA Republicans seem to want to do their work behind closed doors and in secret. My amendment would simply require that we hold open hearings. We need open hearings because for 11 months, we've seen Republicans on these investigating committees distort the evidence.
I
they
think that's
received,
correct. They removed the language.
debunked, fact-checked, not true, distorted, mischaracterized, and misused. These are the terms that we keep seeing regarding the Republican statements about the record so far. Representatives Bober and Marjorie Taylor Greene are prime examples of misrepresenting the facts they hear behind closed doors. On July 31st, Representative Bober tweeted, I quote, Devin Archer confirmed that the big guy participated in more than 20 of Hunter's shady business deals, close quote. That same day, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene told a reporter that Devin Archer
That is
he
correct.
heard Hunter Biden
You
speak to his
nailed it,
father 20
butterflies.
times
It's
about only
going
their
to go
business
that way
deals.
all
The
morning.
transcript of what Archer actually said is that Archer told the committee that he did not, open quote, witness specific business deals or business dealings or specifics about any kind of financial stuff, unquote, between Hunter and his father. What did Archer say Joe Biden actually talked to his son about on these calls? Mr. Norman might be very interested in this, because what Archer actually says they talked about in those 20 calls is the weather, geography, how's the fishing? They were, in Archer's terms, casual conversation. The news articles reporting these discrepancies say the transcription shows the opposite of what Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert claim. Something that is the opposite of the truth could be described as distortion or simply a lie. Una mentira, as we would say in Spanish, a lie. Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to enter into the record the transcript of the Archer's testimony. from
Without
July
objection.
And because it is a big document, the article titled Transcript of Devin Archer Testimony doesn't back key claims about Joe and Hunter Biden.
Without objection.
Chairman Comer, who has appeared before us and who I respect, has been leading the investigations into President Biden. Unfortunately, Chairman Comer has also misrepresented facts. Indeed, the Washington Post reported that Republican leaders exaggerate their partisan reports in the media to claim wrongdoing by President Biden. The Washington Post noted that Comer and other GOP lawmaker claims eventually lead to reporting that is, quote, untethered
She sure
from the
did.
documentation in the reports, unquote. untethered. That means it's untethered from truth. It's untethered from what's actually in the reports. The Washington Post further noted that, open quote, Comer would have more credibility if he stuck to documented facts, close quote. Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to enter into the record the article titled, How Republicans Overhype the Findings of Their Hunter Biden Probe.
Without objection.
Republicans are hiding the facts and then lying to the public about them. There have been 11 months of investigation, almost all of which has happened behind closed doors. And now they want to continue that investigation, continue those committee hearings in secret. What are they afraid of what the public's going to see? Maybe that there's no evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden and that this inquiry distracts from the important work Congress should be doing because Republicans continuously distort the facts to fit their preferred narrative. They've lost all credibility, as this newspaper article notes. Just a couple of weeks ago, Oversight Committee Republicans claimed that Hunter Biden received payments from Chinese companies and nefariously gave some to President Biden. But then we found out that hadn't happened at all. We found out that Joe Biden had helped his son make his truck payments while Hunter was struggling with addiction and in and out of rehabilitation. In 2018, before Joe Biden even ran for president, Hunter repaid his father the sum of $4,140 for a truck payment. Now, Republicans are trying to turn this $4,140 worth of help during Hunter's time of struggling with addiction into an impeachable offense. A parent's love is never without pain. The pain of watching your child struggle with addiction is something that too many Americans know intimately, something my own mother knew as she lost 2 sons to this accursed affliction, but not before she tried to help them. What parent in America would stop loving their child because that child spiraled into addiction and needed help? Americans will see in Joe Biden's truck payments some of their own actions to help their struggling children. Shame on my Republican colleagues for trying to turn this fatherly love into an impeachable offense. Shame on their attempt to politicize a parent's pain and goodness. I urge my colleagues to adopt this amendment to require public hearings, and I yield back.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Okay, once again, just a level set, here's some facts on transparency. So the Oversight Committee has already had 4 memos detailing the bank records. Of course, those have been open to the public. They've had 2 public hearings. They've also released full transcripts of those hearings to the public.
I don't know how many
Um,
times he
They've
said level
continued
set.
to update, not just Chairman Comer, but Chairman Jordan, Chairman Smith have been on TV, they've been on print. You can't turn on a news program without seeing one of those 3 update the American people on this. So to say that we somehow lack transparency is laughable, especially when you compare it to the 116th, when even after the committee went forward with the impeachment inquiry vote,
Right? It
the
is.
Intel Committee
Absolutely.
continued to hold hearings in a skiff.
And to do it in the
Um,
public eye must
Again, so the
be
transparency argument
very
is laughable in the
difficult.
face of the 116th and in the actions of just the Oversight Committee. With that, I yield back.
Is there additional discussion on the amendment?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, we
Ranking members recognized.
can talk about memos. I got a memo here that disproves, basically refutes everything the
Cutting
gentleman
it
just
with
said. But
what?
I have a question. When are the transcripts going to be made public and released?
I got a
of the
memo
interview?
here.
Does the gentleman know?
That I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe before the end of the hearing, he could find out, because again, we talk about open and transparency. That's what we're talking about. I yield back.
Oh, gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Sure, I do think it's really important that this process, if it is to go forward, is open and transparent. I've already had personal experience with this process when David Weiss, special counsel, came in, sat for 7 hours of interviews. He offered to testify in public. That offer was rejected. And then we saw members of the judiciary come out and mischaracterize what in fact he had said in that interview. Mr. Reschenthaler is absolutely right. The three chairs of the committees conducting this sham impeachment inquiry have been all over the news, on Fox, on Newsmax, every night, mischaracterizing what they've found, mischaracterizing what witnesses have said. And that's why it's important that if this is to go forward, the American people be able to judge for themselves. There's a pattern and practice at this point of the Republican majority hiding what's going on, only cherry picking the evidence that they want to move forward, disregarding when it's contradicted even by their own witnesses. And I think it's really important that we adopt the gentlewoman from New Mexico's amendment.
Is there further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, yeah.
Gentleman from,
just a quick observation that our Democrat, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
gentleman from Texas recognized.
That our Democrat colleagues in the Judiciary Committee on which I serve, Oversight Committee, I'm informed, are welcome to participate, do participate. Representative Goldman has participated in the proceedings. They're able to see transcripts, they're able to see the information in committees. That stuff has all been transparent and bipartisan within the committees. The timing on how that gets released, that's, up to the committees in that conversation as we go through the continued investigation. That I also noticed, we're talking about, people running to the press, quick Google just shows a week before the presidential debate in 2020, Adam Schiff going on and saying, quote, while we know that this whole smear on Joe Biden, with respect to the Hunter Biden laptop, I might add, comes from the Kremlin. Clearly, the origins of this whole smear are from the Kremlin, and the president is only too happy to have the Kremlin help and try to amplify it. That's what the American people have seen in terms of show horses going to the TV. I yield back.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
I thank the chairman, and I suppose I'll pose the same question that I posed with respect to the amendment that I offered. I support Ms. Ledger Fernandez's amendment, and so, for Mr. Roy or for Mr. Massey or any of my friends on the other side of the aisle who care to opine on this, all this amendment does is simply say that the committees, the three committees of jurisdiction that you all have decided are the committees of jurisdiction for purposes of this impeachment inquiry, Ways and Means, Oversight, and Judiciary, that they shall hold public hearings. In prior impeachment inquiry resolutions that have been approved by this Congress on a bipartisan basis, the language has always been shall. The Congress has always decided that when you conduct an impeachment inquiry, that the committees be compelled to hold public hearings, that it's not permissive. Republicans, for some reason, decided to delete that language. The shall language has been deleted from this resolution and instead has been replaced with may, giving your chairman of those three committees the discretion to decide whether or not to hold a public hearing. And so I just don't, and Mr. Norman, if you care to, many of you have spoken in the past about transparency and the need for public disclosure in hearings. And I'm trying to understand why this amendment is objectionable to my colleagues on their side of the aisle. And I've yet to hear a cogent answer as to why that is. And I'm not asking, and Mr. Reschenthaler, if you care to, we can go back in time and you can, go.
Hey,
give the litany of
Dempsey,
examples you want to.
welcome.
It's a simple question. The 2019 impeachment resolution compelled the committees of jurisdiction to hold public hearings. This resolution doesn't. And I'm just trying to figure out.
Paul, that's great news. I'm with you.
Anybody.
I have been off
Well, I think one thing when
alcohol
you look at the
since
shall and the may language, you
2005.
got to remember that we're not dictating what the committees are going to do. We're giving them the option to follow the evidence, have the investigation, and then determine whether or not they're going to publish a report at all. We don't think that we should micromanage these committees. As far as the openness and transparency, again, everything has been out in the open and transparent. Going back to the 116th, we have to remember that even after the inquiry vote happened, the Democrats in the committees were still holding hearings in skips where you couldn't go out of the room and talk about what was happening, let alone the American people being able to watch. We've been very transparent now in the open. And lastly, if you want to talk about the 116 and go back in time, you got to remember that this committee was
Oh,
given less than
congratulations,
24 hours
butterflies.
notice in the 116th of moving forward on the inquiry vote. We've been telegraphing this well in advance. We've been open and transparent, not only with the information, but also with the timing. And I yield back.
So I would just say to the gentleman, again, this is fairly straightforward and pretty simple, okay? The prior resolution,
It
Use the
feels
2019
amazing. Yeah, no, alcohol's a real
the language
terrible
is this: the chair of the
physical
Permanent
manifestation of
Select Committee
addiction.
on Intelligence shall designate an open hearing or hearings pursuant to this section, okay? House Republicans replaced Intel Committee with oversight, understanding that your investigation is being conducted primarily through the Oversight Committee. And you deleted the
That's the way
phrase
we do
"shall,"
it, holy fuck.
and
We just wake
instead
up in the
you put
morning
phrase "may."
and we do what we
And
do.
my point, I don't think
So,
it's very complicated. I think most
power
Americans
on,
who are watching,
babe.
by the way, uh, Americans who may agree with you, I think they're a very, very small minority.
Max,
Most
I
folks
think cigarettes,
understand that
I
this is
never
political speech.
had a
But
cigarette. I never had a
even
cigarette habit.
insofar as, Mr. Norman, you making the case that you
Those to me
believe
are
that
the
there
toughest
needs
thing
to
to
be an
give up,
investigation, that there need to be
just based
public
on the
hearings,
conversation I've had
why
with
delete the language that
friends
requires a public hearing?
that have
I, wouldn't you
given
want a
those up.
public hearing? I don't understand why you deleted it. I'm going to go to Mr. Norman, because Mr. Ressenthaler, I've given you a couple opportunities. I always enjoy our colloquies, but I'm not getting much of an answer on this one, so I don't, maybe Mr. Norman might give me a,
Well, as far as the wordsmithing of it, may or shall, or here's
it's a
what's
big
going.
difference.
I get
Siegfried, way
that.
to
Here's what's going to
go.
happen. The results that's coming out of these committees.
Oh,
I
no,
don't
you still went
dictate
back to
when
some,
the committees go in
no.
and what they do.
You do, through
Just
the
like
resolution.
Donald Trump doesn't dictate
Oh,
what happens. All I know is the results will be
sorry.
transparent. And Ms. Gallen, I agree with you. Let's let the American people judge. And
That's
Ledger
impressive.
Fernandez, you bring up Hunter's
Oh, I
drug
smoke pot all the
issues.
time, but
Yes,
that's a
everybody has
choice. I made a
problems.
choice.
Or a lot of people have gone through the same thing.
So
But
that's just, it's because
everybody in America has to pay tax. Everybody has to
I'm
account for the
retired.
money that they
That's what I
make.
do.
Everybody should not get the
It's very
deal that
deliberate.
Hunter Biden was trying to get. And I'll comment, you mentioned that his business associate said that probably the President Biden was talking about the wind
And
and
I
the
don't
weather.
really,
Here's
I
the
don't
testimony
really care.
from Devin Archer.
I can
in one of the
imagine that
hearings
the
testified
pandemic was
that
very
people would be
challenging.
intimidated to mess with Burisma legally because of the Biden brand. During the transcribed interview with Devin
That's
Archer,
right.
described the Biden brand as a value
What?
to a company such as
God.
Burisma. Question: you keep saying
You
brand,
guys are
but
all
by
like
brand you mean
fucking
the Biden family, correct?
willpower
Archer,
kings,
correct.
queens, and
Question: and that brand is what, in your
dukes and
opinion, was a majority
duchesses.
of
And
what the value that was delivered from Hunter Biden to Burisma? Answer: I didn't say majority, but I wouldn't speculate on percentages.
hi,
But I
Clark.
do think that was an element of it. Mr. Biggs, when you say
Hey.
Biden family, sorry to cut you in here. I just wanted to get a
Oh, I'm
clarification. You
sorry.
aren't
Holy
talking about
fuck.
Dr. Jill, anybody else. You're talking about Joe Biden. Is that fair to say? Yes, that's fair to say.
And
That was the answer.
Hey,
I don't know
man.
any other
We're
clear
just
way
all here on this
to
marble trying
show
to
and to be
make
transparent. This is
every day
testimony.
happen.
And if you go back,
This is
Mr. Biggs,
never,
all the
never
things that
going to
have
be a
been
judgment
found
zone.
from
So
what I
no
understand will
worries,
be
babe.
found,
You're among friends.
you can't erase LLCs. You can't erase the pseudonyms that Congressman Roy talked about.
I know, Max.
Text
I know
and
you
email.
have a.
You can't erase that.
It's
You can't
very
erase the
triggering, and I
checks.
don't blame
These
you.
bank statements
You've
don't
you've
just
seen a
drop out
lot.
of the air and you can dispute it. So the transparency, I agree with. The fact of how it's being conducted and what will come out of it, I think the American people will judge. And the Biden family has gotten
Well,
by
Mr.
long enough on this.
Mr.
Let's
Norman,
expose it.
I would say,
I yield to you.
and I would say,
Well,
well,
it's
I'll take back
actually
my.
the gentleman from Colorado's
Oh,
time.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
But no, that's all right.
Mhm,
Look, and I'm
mhm.
going to give my
Me too.
colleague, Ms. Ledger Fernandez, an opportunity to respond more substantively to some of your comments. But I would just simply say this. You keep on saying the American people have an opportunity to decide. They clearly will not under the process that you've designed. Just so we're clear, absolutely clear. Any Republican that votes for this resolution
Good morning,
is voting
Trish.
for a process that would allow the Oversight Committee, the Judiciary Committee, and the Ways and Means Committee to conduct an impeachment inquiry entirely in secret. entirely in secret. This resolution
I actually love all
gives the chairs
accents
of those three
and
committees the power
yeah, I don't.
to
It
conduct
doesn't have
every
that same
hearing in
connection
private.
for me, but I understand. I
hearing.
totally understand
That's never been
when
done before.
people say
The
that.
impeachment inquiry resolutions that we've approved, Republicans, have obviously the vast majority of Republicans opposed them, but nonetheless, the impeachment inquiries that have been adopted have said that those
Uh-oh. Are you
committees
telling me, Paul, it's
shall
time to
conduct
move north?
an open hearing. Doesn't mean every hearing that they conduct has to be in public. That's not what that language requires. It simply requires that they at least conduct a public hearing. And I've yet to hear a cogent answer as to why Republicans want to give that power to their three chairmen to basically say, listen, you know what? Conduct this witch hunt behind closed doors. Do whatever you need to do. You don't need to conduct a single hearing in public for the American people to make up their own judgments. I think that's dangerous.
Thank goodness.
And I don't really understand why. If you disagree with that, you could support this amendment that Ms. Ledger Fernandez.
There you
has
go, butterflies.
offered
I
that
understand
literally
that.
is
I'm
3
glad that that
words
works too,
that just
like, I think it's
takes,
I'm
strikes
really
the
glad
word
they have
may
so many
and
different
puts
formats for
shall
people now.
in place of it, the same way that
It's
this has been
important.
done since time immemorial on impeachment inquiries.
Will
So
you yield for
that's
a
all I'm
question?
saying. I'll yield for a question.
As one of my colleagues
Excuse
mentioned,
me,
I was at the
Joe
SCIF one
Public,
time
I
when Adam
lived in
Schiff
the
was conducting.
Northeast for
We had to basically break in.
about
He had the doors shut. Was that
like
open
10
process in the
years
SCIF?
Yeah.
or
And with
7
Adam
years.
Schiff making all
No,
these
more than that.
accusations?
So
things-
I know
couple things I would say.
exactly how
So,
to drive in
again,
snow
If you're using,
in the
say,
city,
the 2019
in the country.
impeachment as a template or as a corollary, right? There were interviews that were conducted in classified settings and closed door. There were hearings that were conducted in public, right? We all know that. And judiciary, I participated in numerous hearings with my colleague, Ms. Rischenthaler, and others in public. There were also interviews that were conducted behind closed doors. So that's not, I'm not making the argument that the entire process is one in which it conducted all through open hearings. All
Oh, I
I'm
hate
saying
snow.
is that this resolution
Don't get it
doesn't
wrong.
require
I'm
any
not-
of the committees to hold a single public
don't
hearing.
I don't
And I don't
prefer
really
to
understand
drive in
why
snow.
you're so resistant to saying, Chairman Comer, we're going to start this inquiry, and during this process, you have to hold at least one hearing in public. That's a reasonable thing to ask of him. I would think the American people would expect that from Congress. And I'm not, again, I probably belabored this point, but it really, it is nonsensical to me that
I'm so sorry.
Republicans
that I
wouldn't
was
just say, yeah, you know
talking so
what?
low.
This is a drafting error. Maybe it was a drafting error on your part, and we're going to include shall, because these committees, when considering something as weighty as impeachment, they should hold at least one of their hearings in public. But the fact that you refuse to tells me it's not a drafting error and that this was intentional. The same reason you deleted open and
No.
transparent from the
No.
resolution, that you've decided that you're going to engage in a purely political process.
Yeah, I like visibility and
Gentlemen, yield.
crunchy
Of
snow.
course, I would yield to the
Thank you
chair.
very much. Let me just make a quick point, and I don't usually like to interject myself in debate, but as my friend
Yes,
said,
absolutely.
you had open and transparent in the language last time, but not everything was in the open. And I'm not, some of this was classified. I'm not making any accusations of that, but a lot of it was not in the open. In this case, particularly the Ways and Means, may well be dealing with tax returns that would not normally be public. We all know they have the authority to do that. There is some sensitivity about using those words. In the end, we decided we trust the discretion of our chairman. We think they will do open hearings at the appropriate time. But there was some pushback about using this language because there would be times when, frankly, to protect witnesses or folks that accusations might be
I
made,
don't
they
like
might
fog.
be looking at material that you would not,
I
none of
don't
us
like
would
driving
want
in fog.
shared in the open. So I don't, that may not satisfy my friend, but I
Oh,
just
that's not
interject
good
that as
either,
an explanation
Well,
as to
I
what
would
some
say-
of the concern is. And again,
Oh,
I
black
do
ice
make
is-
the point, and maybe that's just a
Yeah,
different,
forget-
we trust the chairman.
Black ice isn't
to
even
do
a
the right thing.
conversation.
You know, you maybe had a stronger feeling about, control from the center of it or making, we just don't operate quite that way. Again, we want these committees to operate independently. We trust the chairman to make the appropriate decision. So I'll yield back to my friend. I thank him for yielding to me.
I thank the chairman, and I'll yield to Ms. Ledger Fernandez.
So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I think that what we are trying to do with this amendment is not require that every single proceeding be open. And I think that's key,
Oh,
so that when
yeah,
there
wet
are
leaves or just
requirements
that first
for
rain when
privacy, as you've
the
just
road
described,
still
or
has
when there are
oil on it and
requirements to protect national security, that can happen. But the idea that there shall be at least some public hearing, because precisely to the point that Mr. Norman is pointing out, that when you are sort of limited to reading through a transcript, you don't get what is very important, which is what about the credibility of the witness? We are going to be asked, and the American people is going to be asked to judge these witnesses on their credibility. And we could not see them testify before Congress. We could not see them testify before the committee. We don't know about their credibility. We all know that we get so much of our information as we see each other, as we read each other. That is who we are as human beings, which is why when you are in a courtroom, the credibility of the witness is key, and that cannot be a judge's decision about the credibility of the witness or a jury's decision about the credibility of the witness cannot be appealed, because it is the person who watches that witness testify that makes that decision. And so this amendment that I've proposed allows what you're describing, Mr. Chair, which we recognize is important. It allows it. That's why we didn't say every single thing that these committees do shall be. It
that
says
sounds
they shall
horrible.
hold public hearings. So it is permissive to allow for the circumstances, because we think it is so important. We do think it is not something that you leave to the discretion of the chairman, that we say as the Rules Committee.
Oh, and what
as
I
the
meant
United
was
States
the
House of
comment. I
Representatives,
didn't mean what
from
she
the
was
point,
saying. I
this
meant the
most
comment.
solemn,
With
as
our
you
fog, you can
described
blow
at the
through a
beginning,
small town and
this
not
most
even realize
solemn
it.
of
Sorry.
obligation, that we uphold
She's
our commitment
perfect.
to the American public, that there shall be public hearings. And that was the intent of the resolution as it was written, precisely to accommodate your concerns. I yield back to my.
Sir, further discussion or debate
well,
on the
and
amendment? Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
I think the chairman, I would just echo the comments made by Ms. Ledger Fernandez. I also want to say thank you to the chairman for providing clarity, at least for me, in terms of some of the rationale behind the selection of the language, because that's really what I was trying to get at and was unable to discern why that decision was made. And what I would simply say is, I think Ms. Ledger Fernandez captured this right, that the shall language is actually permissive. I think it accomplishes what, Mr. Chairman, you and the relevant committee chairs were seeking to accomplish in terms of requiring a public hearing, but also providing the committees with the ability to conduct the necessary hearings that they believe are necessary in a closed setting. And I would just caution and perhaps, beg your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, as you know, and as Mr. Reschenthaler has made the case before, that, every action we take sets a precedent that then becomes a precedent for future Congresses. And walking away from this shall language, walking away from the open and transparent language. And by the way, we didn't do an amendment, but the shall language was removed from the
Oh,
reporting
nice
as well.
tie-in,
So,
Dempsey.
that's an important point for Mr. Norman,
Sounds like these guys are
Mr. Roy,
putting the
others, for
fog
you all
machine
to,
in
I'm sure
relation
you
to
gleaned this from
impeaching
your
not
review
the
of the
President,
resolution.
Hunter
It's
Biden.
the resolution the last impeachment inquiry resolution that was adopted by the Congress had language that requires each of these committees, after they conduct a public hearing, which is required under the prior resolutions, to issue a report, that they shall issue a report. Not the case in your resolution. It's may issue a report. So there's no requirement that any of these committees, after they conduct this impeachment inquiry that you all are very fixated on pursuing, that they issue any report. not a requirement under the Republican resolution. I'm not sure why. I don't know if that's because you believe if the committees don't find impeachable conduct, that you don't want the committees to issue a report that the American people can review for themselves and decide. I can tell you that in prior impeachments, that's been a requirement so that at the end of the day, the committees can follow the facts, and whether they conclude that there is in fact an impeachable offense or they conclude that there's not, they're required to issue a report by the Congress that they share with the American people. You all have chosen to make that permissive. Or, excuse me, not permissive. You've chosen to essentially make it an optional for the committees, just like public hearings are now optional for the committees, just like in an open and transparent process is optional for the committees. And so I would simply ask you to reconsider and perhaps give some pause to that. This language here is not, it is not a gotcha. It's just using standard language that's been used time and time before.
Oh, thanks,
That I-
Scott. Yeah, it really,
Is there any additional discussion or debate on the
really
amendment?
lifts my spirits
Gentlelady
today,
from
the
Minnesota's
colors.
right
So kind of needed
Thanks for yielding me
a
the
little bit
time.
of
I appreciate it. So to answer my friend from
a little bit of
Colorado,
colors. So
look, the
it's-
reason we have shall instead of may, we got to remember
Yeah.
why there was shall language in the 116th. That's because Chairman Schiff wanted to do everything behind closed doors in the skip. So Speaker Pelosi had to change the language from may to shall to compel him to have this out in the open. We don't, that's the historical reason why the language was shall instead of may. If you go back to the 116th, we don't have that problem here because we've done everything out in the open. I just read a stat of how many hearings have been public, how many transcripts have been released, et cetera. And then as far as the shall language on issuing a report, we do not dictate a result to the committees that are investigating this. If there's nothing to report, then there's nothing to report. Frankly, you can make an argument that unlike the Mueller investigation, that airing of dirty laundry shouldn't have happened because there was this decision not to proceed. Now, I think the Democrats have changed the standard, so I like the idea that we do an inquiry and
What?
we release everything, whether or not there's a decision to actually impeach or not. Just again, I don't like that standard, but that's the standard that was set by Mueller, and it goes in the face of prosecutorial ethics and ways of conduct. But again, you change the standard, so we should be able to air the dirty laundry. But that's up to the committee chairs. We're not going to dictate to our committee chairs and predetermine an outcome. So that is why there's the difference here, and we're saying may instead of shall. With that, I yield back to the gentlewoman from Minnesota.
Gentlelady yields back for any further discussion or debate on the amendment. Hearing none, the questions on the amendment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Could have voted, Mr. Chair.
Voted, a roll call's been requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Burgess. Mr. Burgess, no. Mr. Reschenthaler. Mr. Reschenthaler, no. Mrs. Fishbach. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Massey. Mr. Massey, no. Mr. Norman. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy. Mr. Roy, no. Mrs. Houchin. Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy. Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. McGovern. Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon. Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse. Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Leisure Fernandez.
Aye.
Ms. Leisure Fernandez, aye. Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 9 nays.
And the noes have it. I need to interrupt at this point to advise the committee that the Rules Committee has business on the floor. So we will be recessing and we'll return at the beginning of the last vote series, after the last vote is cast on the floor, and resume the hearing at that point. So with that, the committee stands in recess.
Okay, so oops, hold on. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is just hold on a moment and I'll be right with you. But just bear with me for a moment. Thank you. Sorry, I'm having some issues. Yes. Thanks. He is having a break, so they're voting. Actually, we could probably anytime frame. Um, and these are the rules of like rules that they want to use in relation to the in the rules they want to hand over to the particular committees that they want to investigate Biden based pursuing an impeachment. So it's like, okay, start your engines, disinformation people. And that's what they're doing. They're going right along with it. So let me see if there is, what's Dome Watch doing? Because maybe we can just keep an eye on them. Okay, yep, we can do that. Let's see, let me get the sound up here. Oops.
Professionals,
This
elected
having
officials,
said,
athletes,
let me know
artists,
if
and
there's
role models.
any kind
I
of sound
celebrate the
issues.
perseverance and brilliance of this community
Um,
today and for generations to
I'm not
come.
sure.
Congratulations, Liberia, on 100 years.
Odd.
Here's to 100 more. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Speaker. I rise to recognize the Hot Springs Volunteer Rescue Squad on 60 years of serving the people of Bath County. Since 1963, the Hot Springs Rescue Squad has provided emergency medical services to its citizens, including cardiac care, cave rescue, vehicle rescue, search and rescue, and water rescue, along with treatment and transport for medical and trauma patients. With 1 paramedic, 3 intermediate, 6 advanced, 5 drivers, and 20 basic providers, the squad responds to multiple calls for services weekly, and each one of the team members conducts their job professionally and swiftly. Throughout its history, the Hot Springs Rescue Squad and its members have been nominated for and received multiple awards, including the first place trophy at the state EMT competition in Roanoke. The squad's longevity stands as a testament to the civic spirit of the town and an example we should all follow to always lend a helping hand. Congratulations again to the Hot Springs Volunteer Rescue Squad on their 60th anniversary, and I wish them many more years of success. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Washington seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a pediatrician, I understand sometimes competing concerns about making sure that children who are food insecure get enough good quality food to eat at school, and at the same time, making sure that those meals do not contribute to our epidemic of childhood obesity and the accompanying diseases. It was trying to balance these priorities that led to 2012 guidelines that prohibited schools from offering 2% and whole milk. Interestingly, data compiled and analyzed from multiple studies since then does not show a correlation between whole milk and increased obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, or heart disease when compared to other milks. In fact, some studies show the opposite. In addition, milk is packed with nutrients like calcium and vitamin D. As a consequence of the drop in milk consumption, because of these restrictions, many children lack sufficient vitamin D and calcium intake. Vitamin D deficiency is known to adversely
Tell you
affect
what's
bone growth and
broken.
bone density.
This
It may also play a role in risk for autoimmune diseases,
lady's
and many of
screaming.
my patients had very low vitamin D levels. While some children will choose water instead of lowest fat milks, others
No, that wasn't worth it. There we go. Okay, let's talk about level setting. Um, Republicans, our EMTs can save your life faster than your Democrat kids. Democrat kids should eat. It's true. Look at that weird, like the straight. Oh, I guess it's a fire inside of a fire pit. That was hard to tell. So what else is going on today? Let's see. Let me see if there is. Mhm. Margaret, I'm looking at the specifications that you're starting to lay out for the Hunter Biden's laptop world. It's a good one. It's really good. Yeah, I did. Joe, I saw those filings and I read them a little quickly. Um, those seem like uh DOJ experts that actually extracted or law enforcement personnel, don't they? Don't they? I know someone said, "Oh, is the first one Scavino?" No, they're people who actually went into. Oh, I mean, what do you think? Because that's what I thought when I saw that. I didn't see people other than law enforcement personnel who had been charged with extracting, etc., the data, and that they would testify based on the details of their data extraction and analysis. That's how I read. I didn't think it was a big deal, but I mean, not a big deal, but not like Dan Scavino, you know. I didn't get that sense, but I might not have understood it. And then the other thing that I was going to read through a little bit was the Hunter Biden indictment. However, I mean, as I said yesterday, Empty Wheel has a really good, um, oops, has a really good overview of that. of course. Hi, Jim. Good morning. There's a video floating around with him giving a speech when he was a Democrat without the accent. Really? Was he a Democrat? I don't even remember that. I keep checking the Rules Committee. They're still in recess. Actually, their volume's all the way up. I'll hear it once they come back. What is today? Tuesday? Is it Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. What's the next Trump thing? I gotta. Let me look at. Actually, let me look at the Senate hearings. There were no good Senate hearings today that I saw. Thank you to Gal Squad for being really beautiful this morning. Let's see. Oh, he ran as a Democrat. Oh, Scott, that's what a terrible person. Okay. He is exceptionally repulsive. This, I don't, well, those are the Senate hearings. There is on Thursday a Senate Homeland Security hearing on Cyber Safety Review Board. Oh. Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry. Yes, Joe. Thank you. That's really great. Yeah. Geolocation experts would presumably show crowd movement. I hope the trial is televised. I hope so too. Let me see if yes, I don't think I still have that pulled up, but let me see if I can. Mm. Here we go. Hey Pepper, how are you? Welcome. Let's see. Let me find the link. There we go. Okay. Here's what Joe's talking about. Let me make sure we're good. Oh, Paul, go to the top of your chat box where it says top chat and make sure it says all messages. You have to toggle on the chat box to actually get YouTube to show you all messages and just choose live chat. All right, Okay, so this was the filing from yesterday from Jack Smith. Government's summary of anticipated expert testimony. Turn this down. The government has provided its notice of expert witnesses to the defendant. Pursuant to pretrial order, the government now submits to the court a brief description of each expert witness area of expertise and expected testimony. As explained below, the government may call up to 3 expert witnesses to testify in this case. Expert 1 has knowledge, skill, experience, training, and education beyond ordinary layperson regarding the interpretation and visual representation of geographic location data. The government expects that Expert 1 will testify about his or her use of ArcGIS to a software to create a map of the Google location history data produced in response to a search warrant. Specifically, Expert 1 plotted the location history data for Google accounts and devices associated with individuals who moved on January 6, 2021 from an area at or near the ellipse to an area encompassing. Oh, yay! No problem. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Max. Let's see. It's a love chat. The love chat. All right. From an area near the ellipse to an area encompassing the United States Capitol building. So they're tracking. So that's probably tracking some of the militia. His or her testimony will describe and explain the resulting graphical representations of that data, and it will aid the jury in understanding the movements of individuals toward the Capitol area during and after the defendant's speech at the ellipse. Expert 2 has the knowledge, skill, experience, training, and education beyond the ordinary lay. Okay. Regarding the analysis of location and data and location data and location history data, including Google location history data, to determine the approximate location at which a device with a Google location history activated was used at a particular time or range of times. And that might be Dan Scavino's phone. I don't know. The government expects that Expert 2 will testify about the process of determining device location, the collection and use of location history data by Google, and location history data produced in response to a search warrant and included in the graphical representation prepared by Expert 1. His or her testimony will aid the jury in understanding the movements of individuals toward the Capitol area during and after the defendant's speech. And expert 3 has the blah, 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 regarding the analysis of cellular phone data, including the use of Twitter and other applications on cell phones. The government expects that expert 3 will testify that he or she extracted and processed data from the White House cell phones, used by the defendant, and one other individual. Oh, that individual one. Okay, so that's could be Dan Scavino or Mark Meadows or Boris. It could be a lot of people, actually. Probably Dan Scavino. Reviewed and analyzed data on the defendant's phone and individual one's phone. I'm sorry, I keep pronouncing that word differently. Including analyzing images found on the phones and websites visited, and determined the usage of these phones throughout the post-election period, including on or around January 6th, and specifically identified the periods of time during which the defendant's phone was unlocked and the Twitter application was open on January 6th. So is this going to fill in the 187 minutes? Is that what this is going to do? They're still in recess. I know, the love chat. Welcome, Paul. It's a good place to be. The love chat is a little old place where... Look at it. Looks like all your comments are signed by Jack Smith, special counsel. Here we go. Make sure you screenshot your comment as being signed. As I'll give everybody a chance. Everyone's comment can be signed by Jack Smith. Hissed the love chats. Oh, sorry. Device specificity can give you who that device is registered to. I would expect expert 1 to present a bunch of dots and colors representing teams if there were any. Oh, good. Oh, that's nice, Pepper. Congratulations. Oh, that's fun. That's super cool. Have fun. I hope you guys have a lot of fun. Yeah. Let's see. Who else? Here we go. This is Jack telling me, "Hey, Lolo, this system is so broken. Impeachment politics." Jack Smith, special counsel. Here we go. Oh, dang. You gotta keep them short. There you go. Hi, Charlie Brown's teacher. Jack Smith, special counsel. You're gonna be a grandma? Oh no, we gotta put that up on Jack's thing. That is fantastic. Congratulations. A little baby Pepper-ish. What are you gonna go by? What are you gonna call yourself? That's great. Congratulations, Jack Smith, special counsel. I'm sorry, I'm not in a good space, so but this is very exciting, and this is definitely how exciting, Jack Smith, special counsel. Oh, that's so great. No, I don't want to ask questions because I don't. A little pepperoncini. Stop it. That's really cute. That's really cute. That's cute. Pepperoncini. Mm. No, I'm so happy. That's so great. Babies are good. I would be bursting. Are you kidding me? That's amazing news. That's just beautiful. Are you kidding me? You didn't derail anything. Please. That's not even. Um, we're honored that you shared that with us. Yeah, exactly. See, butterflies. We need happy baby music. Here, we'll have a cozy Arctic fire or alpine. That doesn't look like, does that look like alpine? I mean, I suppose they know. And the violin's exciting too. Pepper, you're so funny. Well, that was it, really. It's just the experts, and thanks for Dempsey to weighing in on why this is so important, because I did miss it. Wouldn't that melt all the snow around it? I mean, I know it's not real, so I'm not. But practically, I guess it would just create a big patch of wet ground. This is the thing. It's going to reveal, yeah, Pepper, it's going to reveal where he was, who he was talking to, and sync up with the timeline of the riots, and will prove very damning. And I think that Rudy's lawyer is explaining to judge that he is too old to know what he was saying yesterday. Are you kidding me? Oh my God. Yeah, so Pepper, I think all of that, and this will help. I would imagine this would help identify what happened during the times when the White House call logs weren't available, or the text messages of the Secret Service that were deleted. And not that, I mean, I'm just talking about texts that would have been exchanged with the people that they have the phones of. Now, as for Mr. Rudy Colludi, let me check on Kyle Cheney's. I didn't check his entry to court this morning. Let's see. All right, let me. Okay. Let's see. All right, let me jump us in here. Judge Howell says Giuliani may have defamed 2 Georgia election workers yet again in defiant comments outside D.C. federal courthouse yesterday. I didn't see that, so I didn't know what he said. He repeated the false allegation about which he's done on his show. Whose phones do they have? Meadows, Giuliani, Jeff Clark, John Eastman. Mike Lindell. No. Steve, did they have Steve Bannon's? Shay Moss is preparing to take the stand after a brief break. Moss is on the stand. She appears nervous but smiles to the jury and introduces herself as a 39-year-old mom and former election worker. Moss now describing her joy when, after 5 years as a temp, she was hired as a permanent election worker in Fulton County. It was like winning a golden ticket in Willy Wonka, she said. I loved my job so much. What did the date December 4th mean to you? That was the day that everything changed. Everything in my life changed. The day that I changed. Everything just flipped upside down. Crazy lies were spread about me and my mom. Here's how she described the moment when she realized she was the subject of a smear campaign about her work on the election. Oh, good for her. Towards the end of the day, it was like a buzz around the office because the director was on our side. When he comes to our side, everyone knows, and so everyone was excited. Well, you can read it. Terrible. How this guy can keep inflicting so much harm and not be stopped. Mm. Gosh. How are they going to make him pay? I wonder. I think I'm really grateful. I'm sorry.